right, meeting is now open.
Where's our sign?
Roll call, Mr. McDonald, Mrs. Bronk, Mrs. Fatui, Mr. Trudell, and myself are here, and we have a quorum. I'm requesting that all cell phones and electronic devices be turned off or in a mute position as not to disturb the meeting. Any member of the public also has the right to make an audio or video recording of an open session of the public meeting. A member of the public who wishes to record a meeting must first notify the chair and must comply with reasonable requirements regarding audio and video equipment established by the chair so as not to interfere with the meeting. The chair is required to inform other attendees of such recording at the beginning of the meeting. Other than Mr. White, is anyone else recording the meeting? Seeing none. Citizen participation, does anyone wish to step forward for citizen participation? No. Powers and Sullivan building, I want to bring that up right away. We have a transfer request from the reserve account in the amount of $27,420 to be paid to Powers and Sullivan. This is to fund all the additional audit work that was done for 2010. And the final work that was done in 2011 as well.
Why am I reading $10,000?
$10,000 is the amount that's left in the account right now. As far as appropriation is concerned, that'll be used for the mid-year review. And the 27 is for past performance.
You go first.
Mr. Chairman?
Yes.
I think that we should have a complete accounting of what we've paid to date. And because I thought we did at one time issue a transfer request, and I'm not comfortable with approving this request unless I know exactly how much has been paid, to whom, and when, and what the budget was originally.
The original budget, I will tell you, was
the original budget we have, or the original budget?
The original budget was $60,000.
65?
62.
Sorry.
65 is the new proposed budget. We do have to figure through the end of January. Excuse me.
I just think it's too vague and much too vague an explanation for what they're looking for. And also, I'd like to inform the chair that.
Okay, if you would, you have to, year to date, the expenditure has been $37,500 as of the end of January. So there had to have been another $12,500 that was paid in February. Now, we were hoping that Powers and Sullivan here tonight. They're unable to come because it's tax season. So for the next 2 weeks, it's going to be impossible to get them in here. Yes.
I was informed that they are scheduled to come in for this supposedly 6-month audit, which is a little bit past the 6 months, on April 23rd, which is the start of town meeting. That is the day
then they'll start their work. It doesn't mean that their work will be finished. That's more than 1 day's work.
Well, that's what I'm saying.
Right.
And I mean, it was supposed to be 6 months.
Well, it will be, yes. It will be from the period June through the end of January. It takes them 30 days to close January down.
April 23rd is 30 days from the end of January.
I got a stack.
Pardon?
I have a stack of things here. Let's list. One of my concerns is, and I wasn't sitting on the FinCom, I believe last year, or maybe I was, when we approved the audit money last year for, I believe
We don't approve the audit money.
I'm sorry,
by the Board of Selectmen.
the transfer. There was a transfer last year, was there not, that we did from the fund from the reserve for audit?
Yes.
All right, and then we found out later that the they were transferring money. Somebody, the town administrator was transferring money from the audit fund to cover other costs throughout. And there was a big hullabaloo about that. But my biggest, here's my thing. We're sitting here and you know the balance is $37,500 and you know that there was an additional $12,500 paid, but where I have a real problem is any of that $37,500 from prior year, number one? Because if it's from prior year, I'm a little concerned how our bills come in. If they need the money, they need the money, but before I approve it, I'd like to know that they're following, some sort of general accepted accounting principles and handling the Mass General Law and how they're handling the county.
All right, I'll accept the motion to table. We don't have time to play around with this tonight.
All right.
And, we're going to have to deal with it. I'll try to get them in next week. They won't be in. I'll try to get somebody in because, the other side is we want them in on the 23rd. We don't make some payment.
I understand that. I just want some answers.
Motion to table.
Motion to table.
Second.
Second, all in favor?
Aye.
5-0. That's, what's
It is.
6:27.
6/27. Doctor benefits? You have other appointments.
Thank you. Would you like to stand this end?
Yes, if you would.
And members of the school board that are here, can I come over as well?
If you, yes, you may. Good evening, Mr. Sweat.
Good evening.
I have trouble saying David, so good evening, Rhonda.
Hello.
You did, right?
Yes, you.
Thank you.
Very
The
good.
last planet of the solar system.
You only have two at this point, so you don't have to open, right? What's going to have to happen here, I know you have an appointment, I said I would let you go first. I need to take care of the spinning, and then can I have you back? If you wouldn't mind.
Sure.
Okay,
Floor is
so
yours, sir.
1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Pass that,
Certainly
please.
can.
Mr. Chairman, could I open our meeting?
Yes, you may.
Thank you. I'd like to open a meeting of a duly posted school committee. We have a quorum, and the sole item on the agenda is a presentation to the Finance Committee related to the fiscal 13 budget. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
You are getting 2 documents, and I'll just send the group that way. And the first one that I'll reference is called Draft Wareham Public Schools, and this says draft because it was kind of finalized today and the school board hasn't seen it, so that's why it's draft, and you're having first view at it. And when I go to the school committee, they may decide to make some changes, so that's why it's draft. The beginning of this talks about some of the programs that we have instituted to try to close the achievement gap. That's the first paragraph. It talks about we've made some progress in this regards, but it is going to be difficult without the resources to continue these projects. Down below it in the chart, and knowing that this is the Finance Committee, I know that we like charts and numbers. The FY13 school budget is here shown as it was voted at the 3/21 school committee meeting, where we actually reduced our budget by $1,121,000 from what we had asked for. And the way we got there was doing a subtraction. So now if I reference to you the second paper, there are 2 sides to it, but the one that's the bigger chart shows Article 20, which is the debt exclusion that we have added to the town meeting for educational material. for $341,000. And Article 26, which is the article for an operational override of $780,000 to not have any teacher layoffs. The two of those together subtotaled to $1,121,000. So down below that, you can see net school spending articles, minus the articles, or net school spending minus the articles is $26,074,370. At that Saturday morning that we attended, the TA's budget that was brought forward at that particular time, in fact, on the 21st it was changed. So the new number here is the correct number as it was changed on the 21st before our school board meeting, which was $25,140,794. That still presents the school department with a shortfall from what the TA was proposing and what we needed to get to, of $933,576. On the back of the large chart, we have proposals to cut to level funded. I will say to you, this has not been funded by the Wareham School Board. These are my proposals that will be discussed.
Not funded, approved.
Not approved, excuse me. And the first group that you see, I broke into subcategories. So the first one, the subtotal, is for programmatic cuts, where I went through the budget and took out any of the new programs, the additional tutoring for students that don't qualify for the tutoring because of low income status, the additional MCAS remediation, the summer school that has been free at the middle school for the last 4 years, completely cut, professional development money cut by $10,000, that comes up to $121,396. The next grouping, or any new staff that was added in the FY13 budget. Math teacher at the high school, job coach for the co-op, a special ed teacher for Wareham High School, that adds up to $145,000. The next grouping are existing staff. Assistant principal elementary school. The reason that number is $48,000 instead of a larger number is that person was a teacher in the district and will bump back in, so the net savings will only be of a new teacher that would be dropped near the bottom. One custodian, one secretary, educational administration is another administrative position, as well as some consolidations. A part-time CNA that we use for coverage of nursing situations, that adds up to $235,041. Then I've taken the retirements, any of the teachers who are retiring, and we would replace with younger, less expensive teachers, $114,395 savings. Cutting money from the substitute teacher line, substitute custodian line, those three add up to $174,000. Altogether, column 1 equals $675,832. About, I don't know, a quarter of the way down the page on the right side in column 2, you'll see shortfall after articles were $933,576. Adding up column 1 is $675,832. That still leaves me with a deficit of needing to cut $257,744. At the top of column 2 are scenarios that have to be discussed with the school committee to find out which of these or what combination of these might be the right way to get to that number. And I have listed the total cost of the programs. The total sports program for the schools, $310,125. All extracurricular activities, all of the stipends for advisors, $90,680. The entire instructional leader program that we started, $345,017. The cooperative school, where we have our students that are not being successful at Wareham High School and the Wareham Middle School, that is $452,000. The total of all of those equals $887,697. I don't think I have to say, but I will say for the record that I'm not in favor of any of these cuts. I came before this board back in December, I believe it was, and laid out a needs-based budget. Clearly showed that we had a deficit in attainment of our educational goals. I also showed that according to the state, where our funding is and where the state is, there is a deficit in funding in this community for education. And that if we're going to bridge that gap, we need to bridge the gap in funding. I know this is a difficult year, so people have asked, how can you get to the number? Before you are the way that we can get to the number. On the back of the long paper, I have explanations of the various debt exclusions that the school committee is proposing. And instead of going through each one and explaining them, if you just look about 3/4 of the way down at the chart of the debt exclusions, it will show you that we're looking for $360,000 for the purchase of buses, $110,000 for the high school gymnasium roof, $341,000 for educational materials, which I mentioned, referenced already, and the feasibility study necessary to move ahead for the Minot Forest project. That totals to a very large number of $1,386,000. However, if we then look at what a taxpayer who has a medium-priced house of $230,000 would pay in additional taxes over 5 years, the numbers are here, and the total added to the taxes would be $14.23 a year for 5 years to fund all of those debt exclusions. Through the chair.
Chair. Did I miss, is this per $100,000?
For, no, a $230,000 house, your tax would go up $4.90 to pay off that $360,000 for the purchase of the bus.
Yep.
Okay, so adding them all, it comes out to $14.23.
And that happens to be the median price home in Wareham.
That was close. Thank you, Jeff.
Mr. Chair, there's another question.
I just have one question, and it's about the extracurriculum advisors. Can you just elaborate on that a little bit, on who they are and what they do?
Every club and activity that you can imagine. So National Junior Honor Society, National Senior Honor Society, Student Council, classes, the Decker program, every single program that we have. Thank you. Senior class advisor, junior class advisor. So taking them all out of the contract, that's the number that you come up with.
I applaud you on breaking this out for the taxpayer. I think this will be very helpful at town meeting.
Mr. Paulson?
I have two questions. On the sheet here, the small sheet, if you will. On the back of it, you have the scenarios to reach the new numbers, and you have in the second column 310,000, 90,000, and 345 and 452, and then a number that of 887 and change. I'm trying to reconcile the different numbers above to that 887. That's my first question.
All right, the 887 is if you added up all those scenarios. So if we completely cut sports, completely got rid of extracurricular, completely got rid of the instructional leaders, and closed the cooperative school, that would add up to $887,697.
It doesn't.
It doesn't, I think you left the 310.
Oh, I'm sorry. What did I leave out?
The math doesn't
You left
add
the
up.
310.
Doesn't add up.
Oh, all right. So
more.
when I pulled it down and pushed the button, I must have left a cell off. I apologize.
Well,
1,197,000.
yeah, well, okay.
Big number.
Yeah, it is a big number.
1,900,000.
Through you, Mr. Chair.
1,197,000.
Through you, Mr. Chair.
Yes.
Just to that point, these are the scenarios, again, the superintendent is going to propose to us that these are the total numbers and that we would need to take a look at those and either agree or challenge the superintendent on getting to, within these numbers, getting to the 257,744. So even though he gave you the subtotal there, he's not proposing to cut the 1 point, what those add up to. It's just those are the things that he's going to ask us to look at and to take maybe, 100,000 out of sports or, $10,000 out of extracurricular to come up with the 257,744. That's still the shortfall.
Okay. My second question, if I might, Mr.
Yes,
Chairman.
ma'am.
The roughly $500,000 to do the evaluation of minor, what is the ballpark estimate, sitting here today, ballpark now, of what the cost might be to do minor?
I could not tell you. That's one of the things that comes out at the end of, in fact, I believe in the explanation of the articles on this side, it goes through Article 28, goes through and explains what's involved in a feasibility study. And one part of that is to come up with a complete set of plans that they then do the cost estimate from. So you need a set of plans in order to get the price. Every project is different depending on the environment and the existing conditions and so forth.
If I might just pursue this just for a moment. He must have some idea. Is it going to be a $2 million job, $5 million, $10 million, $20 million?
The Wareham Middle School project cost us $23 million, and that was an expansion and renovation, and that finished in 2005.
And what might not be more complicated than that, less complicated? What's your guess?
For the record, I cannot tell you, and I will not guesstimate because I'm not an architect or an engineer. So I really think we need to wait until I have the numbers to tell you that number. It could be more, it could be less.
Okay, thank you.
If I may, because I also, please, if I may, because I also cited in that conversation when it was held with the state. Basically, they're going to come in and do an analysis, and they will present to us the alternatives that are available to us. And it has to go far beyond just the construction of the building. It also has to go into the educational curriculum and how the building is structured to deal with that. And I also got the impression there's consideration being given to the fact that the other school has 6 portable classrooms that need to be eliminated, etc. The state, basically what happens is they work with us to drop the plan, and then they tell us what they'll fund, if they will fund something at all. All right, now they will fund something, but the question is we might want A, but they'll tell us they will only do B. And that might be more than we originally thought, or it could be less than we originally thought. So that's why, Dr. Benz is saying he can't give you a number, because right now, we don't know the scope that the state is going to set on the project. Mr. Sweat?
I'm actually somewhat sympathetic to Dick's question in the sense that if you had an idea of what the ultimate cost was going to be, then you would say, then since I can absorb that, it's worth hiring an architect to refine it. In essence, the feasibility study is trying to get us an estimate, but if we don't think we can afford even the broad outlines of something. So even if you took, let's round number it, okay? It's probably going to be closer to 30 than 20. Let's call it 30, better to overestimate. We'll say we get a 2/3 reimbursement. That's the states come up with 20, we come up with 10. median contribution for $1 million from a household is about $68. Multiply that by 5 years. We paid off the middle school in 5 years. 5 times 68 is $340, if I'm doing my math correctly, something like that. $340 over 5 years for the median taxpayer to get a brand new elementary school. That's my rough numbers, and I could be off a little bit either way.
I would suspect that the cost will be somewhere between $7 and $10 million to the town, provided we meet the state's qualifications to get 70% reimbursement.
Thank you.
Does that help? Does that help? Tom, you have a question?
Right through you, yes. Is the state putting a time limit or a deadline on us to do this? I mean, does this have to be done within?
We have 270 days in which to get authorization for the money to do this.
For just the feasible study?
Just the feasibility study, that is correct.
That
They
you-
do each thing in order.
Okay,
So
and that's 60% reimbursement, correct? That's what I'm reading, right?
60% is guaranteed for this feasibility study. Then, as part of the next step of the feasibility, they negotiate with you and ask for data to determine what higher percent you're eligible for.
I was going to add, November 9th is the last day that we have to come up with the money. If we do not have, the money allocated by that point, then we're off the list.
We're off the list. Okay, that's what I want to.
Mr. Trudell?
Two questions, if I may, Mr. Chairman. In capital planning today, it was stated that should we not come up with the money, that we would then fall off the list and begin a process all over again, which would take us potentially 10 years to get us back to where we are now. Is that a valid statement?
If I can.
Please.
People are confused because there used to be a list, and once you got on the list, you slowly moved up, and it could have taken you 10 years from when you got on until you got it. That's how we did the middle school project. There is no longer a list. They only accept the projects that they're prepared to fund that year, that they have the funds for. And so once you get accepted, which took us 2.5 years to get accepted, if you fall off of it, you have to begin the process again. And any other district that came before you and maybe can show a greater need may get on and you may not. So it could take you 3 years, it could take you 5, it could take 10. I don't want to say for surety that it's going to be 10 years.
I will just take it that the person who stated that today at the capital planning misspoke. Second question, having attended your all-day session and evening session there, one of the things that you emphasized was there were new requirements for math teachers in the high school, and that not only did the state impose that on you, but they neglected to give you money to take care of the textbooks. So looking at your proposed cuts to level funded, I see we're talking a math teacher at the high school for $45,000. This is going to be a really ugly cut.
I don't know how to answer except to say I look at everything on this sheet as ugly.
Well, yeah.
It is dismantling what has taken years to build. And once you lose confidence from the populace who send their children to our schools, I think at that meeting some people stood up and talked about, at the public hearing that we had, about if they lose confidence and class size goes up, they'll make the determination to move their children down the road to Old Rochester, to Bourne, to private schools, and they won't be back.
Right. Thank you.
Mr. Sweat?
I personally find hyperbole distasteful, so what I'm about to say is intentionally not hyperbole, but what I absolutely believe, and I think there's a lot of reason to believe it. We are about 500 students below what we were at our maximum, which was about a decade ago. But actually, it's only about 250 students below what we could be at. In other words, we've only lost 250 because people are chosen not to come to Wareham. So there's just been an erosion of the overall population, if you will. If you look at that 250, about 2/3 of it is to the parochial system. There is no question in my mind that we are, if all of this is forced on us, there's no question in my mind that it's a, well, this is a bit of hyperbole, but it's not mine, it's something a parent said to me. We're beginning a death spiral for the Wareham Public Schools, and to a lesser extent, but perhaps even more importantly, to the community of Wareham. In the sense that the kind of children that leave are, almost by definition, the result of parents that care. And obviously, parents that have the mobility and the means to leave. I don't think there's a teacher alive who wouldn't say, above all else, give me a parent that cares. We already have about 50% of our middle school population, and I suspect I can extrapolate to include the whole population. 50% of our middle school population is single parent children. So this is anything that contributes to a parent, and some of them have come up to me this year, that contributes to the decision to leave this community, not only hurts us financially, in the sense of the actual school district loses money, but it hurts us in terms of the value of this community. Now, people love to talk about property values. It is absolutely true that some people come to this community and they stare at the water and they couldn't care less about what happens in the schools. Okay? And their waterfront properties will be maintained simply because that's a unique aspect and people will come to the water. But the vast majority of this community does not live on the water. The vast majority of this community will suffer greatly by the fact that the school system is eroded by these cuts. I can't tell you, if I'm lucky enough to be on the school committee on April 4th, what kind of reaction the school committee is going to have to these cuts. I know it's not going to be a unified reaction, because some of us believe that extra is not extra and it's part of the total experience. Others of us believe that one teacher cut is one too many, and anything at all besides cutting a teacher is the right thing to do, and everything in between. All I can tell you is we will probably be unified in the sense that this is a tragedy.
Comments from any members? Bronk?
I just have one suggestion. If you certainly take this to the town meeting and say you're going to remove the sport, I'll bet you get a lot of support out there. I hate to say that, but
It's gotta be in the mix. It's got to be in the mix,
you know, it's
in my opinion.
we need to get this information out to the public. They just need to know this. I don't know how better to stress it.
Mr. Chairman,
Yes.
just one more thing. Some people will look at things like the instructional leader program, which we spent 2 years working on to decide this was a valuable investment, and they will see that as an extra. Here's why I pray that people will not view it that way. We have been watching the results of the students of Wareham Public Schools, well, myself for 7 years, for Cliff longer, and for Bob in the back, decades.
Dirt. Longer than dirt.
We rode a horse to work.
There is no question in my mind that our below average results will, in fact, not only not improve, but may get worse as a result of these cuts. There is no question in my mind that this investment in the support of our teachers and the accountability as well that this will bring to the teachers and the instruction in the classroom is absolutely critical for the results of this community to get to state average and hopefully beyond. That is as the advertisement goes, priceless.
Chris, do you want to say something?
Yeah.
Dr. Dennis does have an appointment.
I just have, just clarification, the, TA's number 26074370, that was level funded?
No.
Does that meet your requirements, or?
No, this, this is the needs based on this side, or you're looking at that paper? Okay. The TA's number was the 25,140,794. That was 250,000 below level funded.
All right, thank you, you corrected, it's 25, you're right, 25, thank
250
you.
below?
Yeah.
But
Yes.
you actually need, just for clarification, for level funded, you need 26074, is that what you're saying?
No, ma'am, I'm sorry. Level funded is on this page, 25,390,794.
Was last year's number? Oh,
Yes.
This was last year's number,
Yeah, FY12.
so,
I'm looking, I'm sorry, on
Yep.
the tall one at the
Yep.
bottom left-hand, second to the bottom,
First-
under
first
net
column.
school spending, 25,390,794.
all right, thank you.
$250,000.
It's a $250,000 difference.
Mr. Chairman?
Do we have, I'm sorry, do we have any more questions for Dr. Levinovitz? Dr. Levinovitz?
Would you like
Unless
to?
you would like him to stay.
I don't think you can.
Yes, I'm
Okay.
already.
That's what I'm saying.
Do you want to wait and talk about non-net transportation?
Yes, I think we will go over the 4 articles, or the 5 articles and vote on them tonight, because I could for that, but I have the Spinney
I
and,
understand.
I have 2 articles that I would like to address first, because we want to give you all the time you need. I don't want to rush you through, because other people are in line. You're very critical to us.
Thank you. We stay on? No, we're not done, that's the point. Then I won't adjourn the meeting, that's my point. Okay, we'll just recess. So the meeting is in recess until we're recalled. So to speak.
These are extras? Yes.
All set?
They're busy talking, but I do have a handout. Would you mind?
No, ma'am, absolutely.
All right, next item on the agenda, we address Article 35, to see if the town will vote to authorize the Board of Selectmen to accept the conveyance by deed from the Friends of the Wareham Free Library Incorporated of certain property located at 259 Onset Avenue in that part of Wareham, Massachusetts known as Onset, on the conditions set forth in the agreement dated June 9, 2005, entitled Donation Agreement, between the town of Wareham, the Spinney Memorial Incorporated, and the Friends of the Wareham Free Library Incorporated, including without limitation, a restriction to require the use of the property for public library purposes and uses incidental thereto, or if the town no longer requires the property for library purposes or historic preservation purposes, and that the town allow Wareham Girl Scout troops to use the meeting room and the building on the property for meetings and special events at no charge at all reasonable times and otherwise on the same terms and conditions as other nonprofit organizations, or to do or act in any manner relative thereto. The Chair will entertain a motion for favorable action. Mrs. Bronx, second.
Second.
Second, Mr. McDonald. Discussion? Take the presentation.
Okay, I've given you a handout. What it is mostly the numbers, which is why they're on the FinCom. The Friends do propose to cover the startup costs and the first 2 years of operations. We will also do the best we can to help with the funding for the 3rd year. we have the funds available for the first two in full. I want to stress that by the town accepting Spinney as a branch, it would bring our main library up to the 50 hours that is required by the state, and they will get the increased state aid of $4,608 annually. I guess the benefits that I see with the town accepting it would be one library with two locations. Would be, we just talked with the school about education. The closest elementary school to the Spinney, the Hammond, has no library. The children can walk to Spinney to get their books. We currently have 3 Head Start classes that come on Mondays, 3 Mondays a month, and we just spend time with them. We have a play group from the East Wareham Early Education Center that meets on that 4th Monday. In April, we're going to start Tuesday evening pajama story time for young children. We have 5 computers available for public use, which are used. Right now, the books that we have are donated books, but the town takes it over. The startup costs for putting books on the shelves and all the needs for the building to become a full functioning library will be covered by the Friends. One of the benefits is that the $25,000 spent on books to start up Spinney would go towards the state requirement for books and materials to help offset that. I hope you have all the numbers. I would like to know if there are
I
any
think
questions.
we've all seen the package, correct?
Mhm, yes.
That they distributed to us, so I'll open it up for questions. Mr. McDonald?
I don't really have a question. I think one of the reasons, before I was on this board, I was on the library board. And the reason that I wanted to be on the library board was, part of it was something to do with Spinney. Because aside from the financial numbers we're looking at, there's a social, economic impact to that library. There are people that have to write GATRA to get across town just to get to a library. And it's not an easy trip for when you're a mother with, one that's this tall and one that's this tall. And some of the other things I guess I've noticed too is that there are things going on, programs going on over at Spinney that will help in that area as far as education. Some of the book, I've given away free books, I believe.
Oh, yes, every child that comes in gets a free book.
So, I understand that we have 2 years of free cost, and there's distinct possibility, I don't know where the town's gonna be in 3 years. We've all seen the 5-year plan. But even if they closed operations, they still own the building, and it's a lot better shape right now than a lot of buildings in town. It's an asset. I just, I sound like I'm a member of the Friends, but I'm really not, so.
Mr. Paulson?
I have 2 questions. One dealing with Spinney, but that'll be my second question. But let me go to the first question. I noticed going through the library the other day that the numbers of computers have approximately doubled, at least from the last time I was there. Yet there weren't many people using them. And I'm wondering what the rationale was and is having that many computer stations. And I'll get to my second question.
Excuse me, Mr. Chairman, Denise Medeiros, the director, is here. I would like her to answer that, since she runs our library.
Good evening. We haven't added any computers at the main library. We moved them. We had them in a different location, and we're setting up a new young adult area. So we put all the computers in that one bank altogether. And those computers, on an average, are used 436 times a week, on an average. So they get a lot of use. A lot of them are getting very old, and we're going to start replacing some of them as we can. But It probably just depends on the time of day that you're in. There are, quieter times than others, so.
On to my second question, then, in this regard, spinning, and I see my friends is here because I've asked her this question. It seems to me, just as a suggestion, but I'll ask it as a question, and I understand the economics of it, so that may be your answer. But it would seem to me that it might be worthwhile, at least for a year, to try it out, to open spinning on Sundays. Given the type of community, the summertime, weekend crowds that we have there, and people, just to see how it would work out. Again, I understand the economics of it. You don't have to, explain that to me or to the rest of us. So if you could put and I know you can't put the economics aside, but tell me, if you would, how you would feel about opening on a Sunday.
Personally, if I may, I would love to see it open on Sunday for a while, but you say the economics. The town takes the building, it would be up to the library director, and it would be up to her to allocate hours, and if any staff work on Sunday, they have to be paid double time, and that takes a chunk out of the budget. And I agree with you, but the logistics at this time to be able to do that, I don't see where it's possible.
Any other comments? Mr. Trudell?
Couple of questions, if I might. Has there been any structural studies done at spinning regarding to supporting the weight of a book rack?
The building was built to be a library. We cannot put books in the original building because we could not change the type of flooring or put the support under it, because then we would be not keeping with the historical. But the addition is built to handle books. There's lots of books on it. It will carry the weight.
Knowing the difficulty that we are facing currently this year, even supporting the current library with regards to maintenance on windows, painting, and everything else, the library board has been before capital planning several times, and it's a struggle to maintain a current library. And as I said on capital planning, to be candid with you, the town's ability to maintain structures is growing less and less each year, mainly due to budget constraints. We just don't have the money in capital planning. And so after 3 years, the potential to turn that over to the town, given our track record of keeping up our building, may not be the best thing for that building, because we're just doing a lousy job of keeping that stuff up.
Well, first of all, the building, the structure, the addition, I mean, even the old portion has a completely new foundation. It had to be raised, the foundation was crumbling. We're talking about basically a new building that has been occupied for less than a year. I would say that any remedial work that would need to be done to the building is probably 15 to 20 years out. Other than maybe some painting on the exterior, but...
Any other questions? Mrs. Patullo?
Hi. On your last page here, you have the $29,400 in startup fees, and then the 2 years of operating costs. I have the original packet that you gave to us, and the $29,440 includes all of the stuff associated to sales, including $25,000 opening day charge. Okay. My question is, we pay, I guess, $25,000 a year for the main library for sales,
No,
the
those,
program?
no, you've misunderstood. The $25,000 is to set up the book collection. The sales, I think the sales figure is $2,500.
Okay, that was my question, because that's not explained here. It just says opening day collection. It doesn't explain
Oh,
what
all
it
right,
is.
okay.
So the $25,000 is for the books, to
Books.
stock the books?
Yes.
Okay, I do have a second question to just for verification. On the sales program, okay, I know we pay an annual charge, okay? Are we going to pay 2 charges for 2 libraries or 1 charge?
No, when you have a branch, it'll be one contract with the town for the main library and the branch, and that is the startup fee, and then there's an annual maintenance, I think, that's on there too. So that annual maintenance would be an ongoing thing.
An annual maintenance on the sales?
Yeah, that would be part of it.
A total or 2 different charges?
No,
for 2
one,
different
it
libraries?
would be built in one entity.
Would it be more money to have a
It would
branch?
go according to the hours that the branch is open. So, you know, if it starts off opened at 12, if you eventually, you know, wanted to improve library services in Onset, which would be fabulous going forward in 10, 15 years, that cost would go up if you add more hours and put in more books and materials. I mean, the size of the building is never going to change, so that won't affect it. But the more hours it's open, the more circulation it does would affect that. But it would only go according to the usage. So the more it got used, that fee could increase.
Okay, thank you.
I'm sorry.
Through you, if I remember right, when this was, robbing the town and everything before, I think most of the crowd had mentioned that it's all well and good, they're gonna start it up, they're gonna do it good, the money's gonna be all donated. And then if I remember what everyone said was, and then they'll dump it on the town. If I remember right, that was
You're
the
absolutely
biggest
right.
thing. So going back to that, how hard of a sell is this gonna be? Because everyone already realized that once you got it going, the buck was gonna get passed. I
Okay.
think that's gonna be a hard sell.
All right, well, the purpose from the very beginning was that the Friends would renovate, put an addition on, set it up, have it be a library with the intent always that it would become a branch of our main library. That was the intent from day one. That's part of the contract agreement between the Friends, the Spinney Memorial Inc., and the town. So we've done what we've said we'd do, and that's been the purpose from day one. So, I mean, it's not a case of now we're dumping it on the town. This has always been the goal, to have it be a branch of the main library.
Mrs. Braun?
To follow up on what Dominic said, I mean, so many people that are at town meeting, you know, we're sitting with the Tremont now, it's costing us, that's the biggest building and problem that the town has to carry forward. And when you folks decided to set this up several years ago, I mean, it did look well and good, and it still is a good project. It's a great project. But given the current economic turn that we're in, we can't even give what the schools need to educate our children. How do we, and I'm just playing devil's advocate here, how are we going to justify a branch to the library when we can't even put a needed addition on the minor forest school without, I'm just bringing the realities of it out to you.
Well,
How do you sell it?
Well, I understand what you're saying, and I know the town is in a terrible financial situation. We are proposing to fund it completely for 2 years. We will continue, the Friends have always worked to raise money to fund our library. And we will continue to do so. And when I say our libraries, I'm talking about our main library, or our, which we'd like to say is one library, two locations. But we will continue to do that. And try to come up with the funds to help into the third year. And we're not going to stop after there, we'll continue. We've been doing it all along. My feeling is this is a needed part of the community. It's going to help, the area wants it, but we get people from all over town that come to Spinney. We've been taking people's zip codes as they borrow books, and we're servicing all areas of town, not just the Onset area. But you have a lot of kids in that area that will use this as part of their education. They'll have something close they can walk to. They'll have the computer access to look, you know, do their research and whatever. Nobody picks up a book anymore, they all go online. But, you know, it's a very little portion of the budget that it would eventually become a part of.
Maybe a little help explaining the hours, because obviously it's going to increase the hours and increase the state aid. So is Spinney open during the time the regular library is open? Is it open opposite hours? Or?
No, the way that it works with the state is it's based on the town's population. And so for the population of the town of Wareham, the Wareham Free Library should be open 50 hours a week. It's currently open 40 hours a week. And there is a sheet in there that gives you the difference of what it would cost to open the main library versus the branch. So the goal would be that the branch would open the 10 hours that wouldn't be overlapping with the main library and could count towards that certification. And that's what makes the branch very cost effective. I've worked in a city that had 2 branches, in a town that had 2 branches, and the hours when budgets were tough were easier to keep and maintain for that reason, because we're talking about having a branch. It's 1,900 square feet that we can staff with 1 staff member and volunteer shelvers to have somebody else, you know, around so the person's not alone in the building. And, you know, at the main library, 3 is a minimum, 4 is nicer. Most of the time it's at least 3. It's a lot harder to staff and keep it safe and keep people. So that's definitely an advantage of having the branch to use for that reason. Not that we wouldn't advocate to bring back 50 hours a week at the main library too, because, I mean, as money becomes available. But I just wanted to mention, when you're talking about the needs, I mean, the library budget was cut in half, you know, 4 or 5 years ago. And we're nowhere near our minimum mandate for the state. You know, the state requirement now is up about 700,000 and we're getting about 400. So, you know, I know a lot of people would like the state to just say, oh, don't worry about it, you don't have to come up with those funds. But once times start to get better economically, I don't know where that's going to go. So it is something that's still out there that the town's going to have to deal with. So, you know, maybe thinking about putting an extra 40 or 50,000 into the library budget in 3.5 years from now, or 2.5 years from now, isn't such a bad idea.
Mr. Paulson.
I guess I'm kind of like a dog with a bone, an old dog with a bone, and I apologize. No, I really don't apologize. I'm coming back on the Sunday issue. Just looking at the economics of it as I see it, and you can correct me if I'm way off base on this. If it costs $50 an hour for double time, I'm just taking a figure here, and if you were to keep the library open on Sundays for 4 hours, $200 a day, and you do it for 10 weeks during the summertime, it's a couple $1,000s. Now, I know that we're not supposed to spend more money. I understand that. But with that said, and with apparently an interest in opening on Sundays, if I understand you correctly, I certainly see that as being an advantage to the town and to the population at Onset. To spend a couple $1,000s potentially would seem to me to be small cheese in terms of the benefit that would accrue to the town, just to try it out for 1 year and see if it works. That's my way of looking at it.
Well, I don't think it would be off the table. I mean, number one, we're dealing with issues, so it would have to be negotiated with the unions to see if they have staff members that would even be willing to work a Sunday. And I know that Sandwich right now they're supporting Sunday hours when their budget got cut through individual donations. You know, for every donation they get, they're able to offer more Sunday hours because that's what the community wants. So, sure, I think that's, you know, it's all out there.
I'm sorry. I don't really think I get where you're coming from, Mr. Parker.
Who wants to come to the library?
It's not a bookstore where all these summer people are gonna go in and buy a book, okay? It's, you're talking about putting more money into a budget for a free service. Okay, so I don't understand where you feel there's supposed to be a draw here. I understand that putting more money into the budget will make the state happy, but I'm not,
if I might respond to that.
No, go ahead.
I'm not trying to make the state happy. I can assure you of that.
Any other comments on this? All right, I guess that probably gets to be worse back there. Not just to bring up. We have a projection for the next 5 years. And that projection came out with a school budget of about $24.5 million, which we know is woefully inadequate to the point that they're going to have to put in a request for 1.1 in overrides and debt acceptance. That projection said that next year our deficit is going to be $541,000, and then 2 years from now, the year that you'd say you want to turn back, the deficit will be $1.3 million. Under those circumstances, all right, since we've cut the schools at that point, and we've cut probably, next year it's going to be the police department that's cut, and the year after that, it's going to be, everything else is already been cut. Do you honestly believe we'll be able to sustain the spending and the main library at the same time? And also keeping in mind, you need $200,000 worth of repairs. If we were to bond that and pay for 5 years, it's $40,000 a year that needs to be put into the main library. And that $40,000 a year is what you're asking for now for the spending. We also have the situation we have no libraries in our schools. All right? And I've told you before, I'm a total advocate of the spending. The problem is until the town addresses the problem, the spending is at high risk of being closed down 2 years from now. There's no other way to put that, and I wish I could put it differently. But the schools, public safety, all right, and the maintenance of the town, all other aspects of the town not associated with the library, etc. I mean, you're at the bottom of the list with the Council on Aging. I mean, there's no other way of putting it. All right, and I hate to say that.
Well, I'm glad
but they have far more grant money available.
Yeah.
They have far more grant money available to them. All right, so my concern on the issue is it's a wonderful gift. I've been to see the building. All right, I've raised some questions. Yes, the books we have there now, it's nice we can give them away. Once it becomes a branch, you're going to have to duplicate books. You're going to have to have shuttle service, etc. There's many other operational problems that I think will take you beyond the $40,000. My question is really to you is, do you really want to risk the building? My personal opinion is I don't want to risk the building. I want you to be there 3 years from now, and I would love to see you here 2 years from now, saying, now that you solved all your financial problems, take over the building you promised you said you would take over. And I'll even volunteer hours to help you keep it open if you maintain it as a private.
Well,
that's my say.
I understand what you're saying, but we do need to fulfill our contractual requirements, which says that we have to bring it before town meeting prior to June of 2012.
I fully agree that you do. Okay?
And that's what we are doing. I mean, I would like to see it become a branch, because then we get full library services. And I understand the schools have little or no libraries. This would certainly service the children in Onset and East Wareham and the other areas. I do not want to see it closed after 2 years. You know, we're going to continue to fundraise to help both buildings whatever way we can. I mean, obviously we can't fix windows. We have been asked to do that. Why can't the Friends fundraise for that? But that is not something we can do, but we certainly can help with books, materials, programs and everything else, you know, I guess maybe I'm more of a, have more faith in our town. And I think that once people start using Spinney, they'll continue to use it and feel it's a priority.
I would tend to agree with you, provided there's money to keep it open. Does anyone else have any other questions, comments?
Could I just make one? Because I'm here and I won't be able to sleep tonight, I don't get to say it. I've been a public librarian for many, many decades now. Worked in inner cities. Public libraries are always going to be at the bottom of the feeding pole, so to speak. And when people, the way that we've survived for hundreds of years is that people go out and they support them and they fight for them. And that's what's going to happen from this. And it's going to really be up to the people in the town what kind of library services they want to see going forward. You know, and I understand that there's a limited amount of funding, but as in the schools, I mean, these are decisions people are going to have to make. They're going to have to decide what type of community they want to live in and what kind of services they have. Now I can sleep tonight. Thank you.
I can sleep better too.
Thank you.
Thanks.
Thank you all very much.
All in favor of the motion for favorable action, signify by saying aye.
Aye.
I'll need by hands, I can't tell how many there were. 1, 2, 3, opposed? No abstentions, committee votes 3, 4. It's unfair. 3, 4, 3, 4, I'm sorry, 3 for the motion, 4 against the motion. Now, before I go any further, is there anyone who would like to write a minority opinion on this? You said on our recommendations, we would do.
Oh, come on.
Pardon?
I'll write it, but I will.
Mr. McDonald will write a minority
Send it on over
opinion.
to,
You can write it, you can write it together.
I ain't sending it to you.
He's talking about Jen.
You can write it together also. Anyone wish to write the majority opinion? Come on, guys.
I like the way you said it.
I'll give it a shot.
I have so many to write. All right, I will edit too, don't forget.
I like the way you said
I'll
that.
edit both.
But it was the close to 2 years after that. I just, you know, I never even
That's
thought
enough.
it was.
Mrs. Bronco, write the majority opinion. Thank you. The CPC, we need to get the CPC. Somebody would, they step back to their room.
I'll get them. They have their own room? Wow. Wow.
Well, they have one going on, they come down.
Technology is unbelievable.
3 of them are 30, let's see, 38, 39, 40, and 41. 3 of them are housekeeping, so those should be quick votes.
We keep us all the
Yeah, let me think
city
those.
line here.
These are not.
I didn't sleep. Somebody kept me awake all night.
All right.
Your husband.
All right. One moment. We're also trying to make arrangements for, this is Superintendent Farr from the Upper Cape to come see us next week. He's unable to make it this week. So we're trying to make arrangements through the town administrator's office.
This guy's gonna be retiring this year.
I know, but I know you all asked if we could have him come in and couldn't do it tonight.
Shot up zoo and fire in the face.
No.
Got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. We got 5. All right. Article 38 is to see if the town will vote to hear and act on the report of the Community Preservation Committee on the fiscal year 2013 community preservation budget, and to further to reserve for future appropriations from the Community Preservation Fund FY 2013 estimated annual revenues. The following amounts as recommended by the Community Preservation Committee. 1, $21,200 to meet the administrative expenses and all other necessary and proper expenses of the Community Preservation Committee for the fiscal year 2013. 2, 63,200 open space reserve. 3, 63,200 to historic preservation reserves. And 4, 63,200 to affordable housing reserves to do or act in a manner relative thereto. And Chair will entertain a motion for favorable action.
So moved.
Mrs. Brown, second. Do I have a second? Mr. Camerano.
Oh, sorry, where are we?
Article 38, which is the allocation of the funds. Anyone?
I called them, they're counted. They were all the way down.
Are we up?
Far in the building.
Yes.
Explanation we have, this is basically is a housekeeping article. And the amounts are going into, they're allowed 5% of revenues for administrative costs. I read Article 38. Are there any changes to the numbers?
No, there are none.
There are none. We have a motion and a second. Any questions? Mr. Trudell?
Could you help me understand what 21,200 on administrative expenses buys us?
It's used for administration. If you give me a minute, I can find out what I've used in the past. But we do ask for an attorney to review some of our questions that are associated specifically for CPA funding issues. Right now, is it a 21E? 21A? We've been asked to do a study on the Weweantica Hearn property, doing a 21E study. Our admin funds would be used to fund something like that. We buy some paper to be used at the town hall copier because we do some printing there. So we buy them a case of paper or 2 cases of paper every couple years, that type of thing. I think last time I was in here, in front of, I had given a list of exactly what we had in the past been using for admin funds. We have a $2,500 monthly, $2,500 annual bill for the state, coalition, CPA coalition. That's our fee for belonging to the state organization that we go to for a lot of our questions regarding it. In the past, we've had someone write preservation restrictions, and we pay for that out of our admin funds. Last year, we had admin funds available of $39,000, and we used only just under $13,000 for it. We had someone write preservation restrictions, RFPs, and that's how we've used our funds.
Any other questions? Seeing none, all in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? 700.
What was the number on that one, Tom?
38.
Thank you.
That's 38. Article 39, to see if the town will vote for the community preservation funds FY13 estimated annual revenues, the sum of $101,328 for payment of debt service on the Tremont Nail property, and further the sum of $7,223 for payment of debt service on the property known as Bryant Farm, both voted for purchase by the town meeting in April 2004, or to do or act in any manner relative thereto. Chair will entertain a motion for favorable action. Mr. McDonald, second. Mr. Camerano. Discussion? Is everybody familiar with Mr. Paulson?
Just to get an update on Tremont Nail, what's going on there recently?
That's not in line with the article, please. I mean,
Well,
Do you want to know the balance? Is that what you're asking?
no, not asking the balance. I'd like to know what's
we
going
have
on.
I'm sorry.
we have a lot. We have a lot. We have a lot to do. I would like to stick to the article. This is for the payment of the mortgages. Normally we come up with the fall. We're doing it in the spring so that we do not have an over allocation for debt.
Okay. With all due respect, we're asked to spend
and I realize we're committed to this $101,000, but with all due respect, Mr. Chairman, we're asked to do this every year, and I will continue to ask the question as to, well, what's happening? Sorry.
In such case, I think we should ask the Tremont Nail Master Plan Committee to come explain that to us. Their responsibility is the mortgage payment, not the development of the property.
But in due respect to Mr. Paulson's request, this is a lot of money.
This is a mortgage. If you don't pay it, the town has to pay it. Normally what's going to happen in the past, by the way, because we just went through this, where we transferred a mortgage guarantee into another account. So if we do not pass this article, then we have to go back and redo in the budget a payment of $108,000 for the mortgages because the town can't default. Mr. Trudell?
I understand Mr. Paulson's point of asking what's going on here, because those of us who drive by and see the plywood are curious. However, the point is, this is a payment that we are making, or the town is making. If we do want to deal with what's going on there, I think perhaps calling the CPC back, if they would come to deal with it, Tremont Mail might be in order, but to me, this is a simple, it's debt, we either approve it or we don't.
Mr. McDonald?
Balance, that was, as we said it earlier, I think that's something we need to, this is a mortgage.
I had sent out a one-page summary regarding these articles last week, in which I put the balances, the debt balances of both projects on it.
Okay.
We have a debt balance of Bryant Farm of $61,000. We have a debt balance of Tremont Nail of $863,000.
They were almost there.
Thank you.
I knew someone would ask the question, what we have left.
Any other comments related to these mortgage payments? Questions? Seeing none, all in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Abstained? 700. Article 40 is, I move that the town vote to rescind Article 36 was voted in the spring 2011 town meeting or take any other action relative thereto. A motion for favorable action?
I'll make a motion.
Do you have a second?
Second.
Second, Mr. Trudell. The explanation is we are not able to acquire the full parcel of land described in Article 36 of the spring 2011 town meeting. The request is to rescind the article so that funding for new acquisition be known as moving entity can move forward. Any other questions? In other words, we're not buying it.
Can you just summarize what was Article 36?
That was a piece of land along the Wee Atlantic that they were
It
going to buy.
was, excuse me, Mr. Chair, it was 6 pieces of property along the along Horseshoe Pond.
Okay.
And it was a combination of, Eagle,
Okay.
Holt, and stuff like that. And altogether, the state did not come up with the supporting funds that had been expected, so we could not buy all the pieces.
Okay.
So
Thank
we
you.
went for the upland.
Mr. McDonald?
So you did buy property,
We
you just buy all of it?
We didn't buy any of it.
Okay, so the amount of money, which, whatever, did you tell us what that figure was, 36 million?
We had $375,000 that we bought, that we allocated in the last town meeting to purchase those
Right.
6 lots
Okay, so now that money goes back,
into our bucket
okay, and it just sits there.
until Article 41 is discussed.
Perfect, all right, that's where I was going. Just wanted to understand.
Any other questions? Seeing none, all in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Abstention? 700. Article 41, see if the town will vote to appropriate from the community preservation estimated annual revenues or any other monies in the community preservation fund under the category of open space pursuant to the Community Preservation Act, General Law 44B, the sum of $430,000 for the purchase and improvement of the Wee-Wee-Anticahern River Corridor, including associated costs of Wee-Wee-Anticahern River Corridor as follows. To authorize the Wareham Conservation Commission and or the Board of Selectmen to utilize these funds, along with any state, federal, or other outside grants and funds to acquire by purchase, gift, or otherwise for the conservation, passive recreation, in fee simple, land described as Assessor's Map 75, lots 1004, and .433 acres of parcel 1003, 96 LLC owner, total plus or minus 19.69 acres, and further authorize the Wareham Conservation Commission and/or the Board of Selectmen to grant to a nonprofit organization qualified and willing to hold such restriction or perpetual conservation restriction as required under General Law C-44B, Section 12A on said property, or take any action thereto. Favorable motion, Mr. McDonald. Do I have a second?
Second.
Mrs. Cattouli, would you like to explain?
Oh, go ahead.
It was exactly what Sandy had just said, that we had to restructure the amount of land that was purchased. This is one less lot than what we had. 21E is being conducted on the property as we speak. It's in process. Mr. Jesse Ferrer was here earlier. He's the land protection and stewardship specialist, but he had to leave us. I can send out the new maps, the revised maps, to each and every one of you if you so choose, so that you can see the reconfiguration. If you have any other questions.
This, may I, through Mr. Just to continue, this is 19 acres of upland, right on the river, right on Horseshoe Pond. It was part of that article from the prior year. So we chose the best land that, with additional $55,000 is all it's going to take in order to get these 19 acres. Because the 375 had already been voted by the town, so we're just looking for an additional 55. These 19 acres have already been subdivided into house lots. So we can save that development and save a waterfront for the general public. That .33 acres on one of the lots will be set aside for parking. So we will have parking right off of Horseshoe Pond Road, I think it is, for access into the depth of this property.
Mr. McDonald?
At the risk of getting hit from a projectile. That's coming, I know.
I do not have a rubber band.
No, but she has a pen in her hand. I understand the need to protect land, and I, especially wetlands, we're trying to protect our environment. But at some point in time, are we scooping up land that could possibly earn revenue for the town or bring a new business into town, or maybe even a hotel? I don't know. And I'm not saying you're not doing a wonderful job, because you are, but please don't throw that pen. Is there a point in time when we say, okay, we've got protected a fairly large lot of things, what about, can we develop this land for revenue purposes? Not on the Weeannick, but other pieces of property. Are we spending too much money protecting and putting ourselves into a place where we're not going to have any place for a new business who may see and just as an example, a 19-acre lot, and say, you know what, I'd like to build right there, a hotel, or I'd like to build a business right there with a good view. So I'm just asking the question, please. I'm sorry.
No, it's a fair question. However, I want you to consider how much money it would cost in town services for development down there, for properties that would probably bring in families with children, impacting the school system, impacting the police department, fire, and so on and so forth, maintenance department with highway services. I think that protecting the water, and of course this is from the conservation angle, in comparison to the cost to the town in those services for a new development down there, I think would be considerable. Okay. So, your consideration.
There is an offset. There's an offset on the taxes. There's an offset on the local spending of the people say you built a really nice subdivision. Not that you would. They're going to spend money in town. I don't know. It's a cyclical thing. But I was just curious because I think at some point in time, when you get to the point, maybe people want to protect everything and not bring anything new in it. But at some point in time, there has to be a balance in order for this. You see the financial crisis we're in, and
that's what I'm addressing is.
Well, I know, but at the same time,
the drain on town services.
Okay.
Go start going in the circle, Mrs. Brown.
I just think it's 19 acres of land, and a lot of it's waterfront. Am I correct there?
Yes.
Boy,
It's all- yep.
the tax revenue that could bring in, you know, the tax revenue, I think, would outweigh the services, in my opinion. And I understand the need to protect open space, but, well, we gotta find some revenue in this town to pay for what we need to have, and I just find the land is, to me, not the best way to do it right now.
Mrs. Cthulhu?
I'm just curious as to, you say this is a lot of waterfront property, what sort of use can town residents have on this property? Will there be, are you planning on trails? Is it going to be water access? Can you go down there and put a fishing pole in the water? What's the story?
And kayaking, yes. There will be, there are trails in there now. There will be more trails. There will be parking. There will be access to the water for any one of those passive recreation uses. Fishing.
Do I have to have a sticker to get down there, Fred?
I don't think so.
Okay.
No, nobody's watching you.
Mr. Trudeau?
I acknowledge Mrs. Brock and Mr. McDonald's comments regarding development of property. And taxes are used to support those services, so that's the cost of doing business. However, one of the things I know that Wareham doesn't have is a really great place for a park. I said this before, I'll say it again. You go out to Northampton, they have a place called Wood Park. It was endowed to the city. They turned it over to a local, the city runs it through an organization that handles the park. Veterans go in for free, residents go in there at a nominal cost, or a picnic table by number, by place. There's a stream that runs through there. They have paddle boats. They have a little railroad for kids. You go down to Springfield and they have Wood Park. I don't see any of these things here in this town, but I know if we don't take the property, if we don't take the steps to preserve this stuff now, it's gone for that opportunity forever. And like I can, and believe me, Larry, I know we need the revenue. But on the other hand, I know what a community park can mean to a community. I'm not saying that you turn this into a park. We at least need to preserve some of this stuff for the opportunity to do it in the future.
Can I respond?
Yes.
I'm not saying just for this property, I'm talking about overall. At what point in time do we get where we say, okay, we have to balance that? I'm not, listen, if somebody would go out there and build me bike trails, I'd be a whole lot happier riding down the road on my bicycle, because these people are coming at you and they're not paying attention. So there's no doubt in my mind, this is something we need. But just overall, I'm not saying for this property.
Mr. Paulson?
Just out of curiosity, is there, I'm somewhat familiar with the property, is there a road into the property that the town controls?
No.
So a road would have to be, something would have to be done then in order to allow cars to go into the
Well,
park,
yeah,
the proposed park?
if it got to that point, yes. But right now, we're only expecting the people to park off the road and then use their 2 feet to go further into the land. Somewhere down the line, now keep in mind, this is purchased by CPA funds. It is owned by the town. With CPA funds buying this property, there can be something done later using CPA funds to develop the land to do something other than just be a place to walk. But because we're using our CPA funds to do it, it would be a project to go forward to do something in the future. But it will be owned by the town. Conservation restriction will be held by a nonprofit. And when that conservation restriction is completed, we will work with them to see what can be done on that property.
Any other comments? Well, that comes to that, at the risk of having things thrown at me.
Thank God.
At the risk of having things thrown at me. We've had a number of items over the years go through open space. We've had restrictions put on, restrictions put on preservation, conservation, whatever. All right, nothing's developed. We don't have anything developed. It is an override to our tax levy. we pay an additional 3% of whatever the tax levy is, the surcharge. There are more and more uses being found for this money in other towns, such as, and I know one of them coming up definitely is something about repair of playgrounds, et cetera, and things like that, which are highly functional for the people of the town. I don't know that reserving all the space is quite that necessary. It's not like we're a metropolitan area where we have very, very limited space. There's a few thousand bogs out there that over time, if we wanted to have open space, we could say they were open space or stand them over, make a park, etc. I watched a very large area in Boston Harbor filled in, one of the most beautiful parks in all of New England now. There are ways to get the parks, all right, and we can do them that way. The question is do we continue to surcharge the people in the town and then find a way to spend the money, or do we need a strategic plan? I agree with Mr. McDonald. We just can't keep buying land, putting preservations on it, and then saying we'll do something with it in the future. We have some pretty ugly situations in the town right now that are the result of that type of thinking. Right? And I'm not going to name them because they're highly controversial. And that's my stand on it. So, anyone else have any other comments? Mr. Trudell?
There is a space below the Tremont Dam that perhaps the CPC should look at.
I'm sorry, I didn't hear the question.
I said there was a space below the Tremont Dam that perhaps the CPC should look at.
My one last comment will also be is that we're going to go out in the next few weeks and we're going to, on bended knee, ask taxpayers to do exclusions and overrides for approximately $1.5 million. At the same time, we're coming by and saying, one nice water view for $400,000. That doesn't fit my thinking. If I vote for this one, I can't vote for the other ones. Mr. Paulson?
Well, I happen to share some of your sentiments. I also share, I actually share the sentiments of most of the people around this table in terms of the pros and cons. I am going to vote for this. I have reservations. One of the things I would like to see, frankly, is the land not be put into what I would call conservation. I would like to see, and Dave kind of suggested this, something where it's more actively used. That would be my personal preference. However, with that said, as I said, I'm going to vote for this and hope that you consider that.
Mr. Chair, just that, keep in mind that this is just an additional $55,000. We are returning $375 in a prior article. So it is not as if we're asking $430 out the door, only additional $55. And a conservation restriction can be geared toward more activity on the site. There is no boilerplate that is used from site to site. It can be discussed and be much more. I know we're trying. Keep in mind, there's also a 7-year open space plan that the town has adopted that talks about open space and being saving as much as we can. So there is a plan in place. I don't know if anybody's ever looked at it, but we got it approved by the state. Sorry, I'm done.
Mr. Camerano, to finish up on this.
The overall balance of CPC, do you have those numbers?
Yes. Okay. Okay. We have left over from FY12 estimated revenues, $368,000. We have left over from unallocated balances from prior years of $63,000. We have an affordable housing reserve, $379,000. That's without any of these FY13 articles being processed. If all of these articles, the Article 38 and 39 would leave us a balance of $302,000 for FY13.
I may have asked this before, but how much money comes in from just the tax, and I guess you can call it a levy, if you will, the tax, do you know right offhand how much of that is?
Just under 300,000. We normally do smaller. We always be conservative, and right now we're looking at 515,000 for FY13 as our estimate.
That's the total with the tax?
That's the 3% surcharge.
Okay, is there matching funds from the state?
The state right now is forecasting a matching fund of 22% for those that are in a 1% allocation. We're at 3%, and last year we ended up with 33.5% matching funds from the state. Because we're at the 3%, we get more.
Okay.
Quick math, if I heard you saying anything right, I just come up with $1.6 million for the schools. I don't know if anyone else can
You can't spend it, so it doesn't matter.
Bad joke, I'm sorry. Okay.
All right, if we could, it is $1.6 million to school. Again, I'll go back, we're begging for overrides. Some of them in the $300,000 to $400,000 range, and there's $500,000 every year that's correctly.
That's what I meant.
The overwhelming majority of the population, especially the seasonal people, I don't know what they get from it. End the conversation. All those in favor of the motion? Opposed?
Opposed.
It's 3-4. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, sir. Ladies and gentlemen, good evening.
Who's going to write the majority opinion? The negative side? You write the majority, the minority opinion? Mr. McDonald.
You want me to write the?
You write the minority?
Yes, I am.
You just confused me.
No, the majority opinion was a negative vote of 4.
Oh, I'm on the wrong side, then get someone else.
You want the minority?
Yeah, well, I can do it.
Are we on the same side?
Yeah.
Yes.
Oh, then you write it. Thank you.
Majority opinion?
Yeah, you're right, I'll take a shot at it.
You take a shot, and I'll let my brains out.
Somebody's gotta go out and
Okay.
keep my car or something after that.
3-4.
School committee.
3-4, yeah.
I'm not looking for, I don't want to hit me in the back of the
I
head.
don't think he's counting.
He said he would be
After 8 o'clock.
He said he would be here. Thank you very much, gentlemen.
Our pleasure.
Gentlemen?
Whoa.
And I started to
I'll throw
say
something on your head.
that- Ma'am?
Okay.
First article that I have on the list has to do with the vocational. Do you want us to vote on that tonight, or do you want us to?
I would want to vote on that tonight with them here.
No, you don't want to vote on the minority.
We brought special projectiles for
Yes.
All right, in that case, I will hold that vote to next week. I will hold consideration of Article 10 until.
No, we have stuff to say on it.
All right, Article 10,
can I just say
too late,
something
you
about
said no. Too late, you said no. You had an opportunity.
Okay, that's fine.
What's Article 10?
Hold on a second. There's no reason.
Water pollution.
We still want to do this, I think, have Mr. Farley. Article 7 is to see if the town will vote to raise and appropriate $2,595,519.no as its share of the operating and capital costs of the Upper Cape Regional Vocational Technical High School District for the fiscal year July 1, 2012 through June 30, 2013, or to do or act in any manner relative thereto. I need a motion for favorable action. Mr. Castillo, second. Mr. Camerano. I'm going to let the school, I'm sorry, go ahead.
I just, for discussion purposes only, before we get in a long, drawn-out debate, we have 4 towns that this crazy formula that we're married to. Even if we vote it down, we're gonna get stuck with it. Is it right? Probably not at this time, it isn't right. However, I just think that we have to look at the article the way it is and the way the formula is written, and we should have had the Mr. Farr in to speak to us, and
We will still, I'm still planning to have them.
Okay.
The question is scheduling.
But we shouldn't be
Okay,
voting on, we shouldn't be voting on it unless we are, I'd like to make a motion that we table this article.
I would prefer not to table it till we hear from the school committee, and then we can bring it off the table when Mr. Park comes in.
Okay.
I don't want to have them to come back a second time. So,
That's
if
fair.
you, please let them speak so.
All right.
Okay.
They're gonna answer for me.
With respect to Upper Cape, we think they perform a valuable service to our students. I have, and I think I speak for the whole committee, I've never heard a dissenting word with respect to that. But I do want to point out, since this is a finance committee, the fact that the compounded annual growth rate for Upper Cape, for what they are charging us for the last 12 years, so there's a real trend here, is 4.9% annual growth rate. In addition to that, the number of students that they are taking, educating, has actually gone down since 2001. People think that it's gone up. Well, it actually was up, it went down, and now it's back up again, but it's not, has not reached where it was 12 years ago. And yet, despite that, it's higher. And in fact, if you do a compounded annual growth rate associated with a per student, which is, in my mind, the most relevant way of looking at it, it's now 5.9%. So this is off the charts. And my recommendation is that regardless, I mean, you may want to, for prudence reasons, to allocate the amount that they've asked for because you don't think you'll get the cooperation from the other towns to push back. But to allow them to continue to accelerate at that level on a per student basis while you're being forced to do such draconian cuts to a system that takes all comers as compared to Upper Cape that screens based on academic performance, behavior, and other factors, I think is just a disservice to the town. But so those are the numbers associated with Upper Cape. And to be fair, we are at 1.8% on an annual basis and 3.5% on a per student basis. So 1.8, 3.5, 4.9, 5.9 are the two comparable numbers if you want to compare the two systems.
Mr. McDonald.
Okay, so then, I think you may have answered my question, but let's try it to make sure. The number of students that come out of the Wareham, town of Wareham,
correct,
go to the Cape,
yes,
has dropped.
Since 2012.
Since
2012. Sorry, since 2001. It was up, it went down, and then it's starting to come back up, but it has not reached the level that it was at in 2001.
And yet they've had a steady increase in their cost. So we've been, in my theory, my way of looking at that is we've actually, it's possible that we funded students that weren't coming from Wareham to a certain degree with that.
I mean, they're all Wareham students.
By the way,
their per pupil is very high.
I can give you those precise numbers. I'm sorry, it was 2003, so it's a decade. 243 students in 2003, 215 students in 2012.
I'm sorry, Dr. Silva? Dr. Silva, speak.
I'd just like to just build on what Jeff said, and the school committee knows that this has been a thorn on my side for quite some time. And it's not because I don't believe in technical education, because I do. But I think that you have to look at this thing from an equitable perspective, and there hasn't been equity for many, many years now. You know, when we're talking about educating our children, all right, and we have all kinds of different ways in which we educate our children. We have specialized schools here, we have an alternative school, and we have Upper Cape. These are all ways in which we commit to educating our kids. But when you compare Wareham Public Schools with Upper Cape, there's not equity. And I think that at some point in time, I agree with Mrs. Bronk that says, yeah, we may have to pay the bill anyways. But I also believe that if two communities go back to Upper Cape and says, no, we're not going to continue this rate of increase anymore, we're not going to do it anymore, then they have to go back and they have to regroup, and they just cannot continue to operate on almost a 5% increase annually. That is not equitable. Here we are on the eve of dismantling Wareham Public Schools, and we're going to reward them with a 5% increase. It just makes no sense. in my opinion.
All right.
On that figures you were talking about the decrease in students, but has the amount of students going to Wareham High also is the decrease the same, or what's the difference?
Right, that's why I calculated it two ways for both schools.
Okay.
Cost per student versus the compound annual growth of the cost per student and the compound annual growth just based on the amount that is approved at town meeting.
Upper Cape's enrollment stayed steady though. They're just getting more kids from other schools, from other towns.
You were saying that Wareham students decreased, but has our enrollment decreased? You know, is that?
Yes, it has.
Yes, it has.
Yes, it has.
So is that percentage comparable?
I would say that we've got the kids to give them.
I can give you the precise numbers. I'm not sure exactly how to answer your question. Our enrollment in 2003 was 3,489, and we were sending 243 students to Upper Cape.
Okay.
For 2012, none of this, by the way, includes 2013, the budget we're discussing, because those numbers aren't fixed yet.
Okay.
Certainly on per student. So we're at 2996 now, and they're at 215. So I just did the math. So to put it in numbers that may be even more meaningful, in 2003 we were spending, now you can calculate this number any way you like, but I'm just taking the number that we approve at town meeting and dividing it by the number of children we report to the state. But you can calculate it many different ways. We were at $6,243. Okay? They were at $6,574. Pretty darn close, right? Pretty darn close. For 2012, based on the number of students and the number of dollars approved by town meeting, we were at $8,475, and they're at $11,047. So you can see how the spread has just gone like that over the last 10 years.
That's the compound, 5% versus 1%.
That's exactly right.
That's exactly right. Mr. Paulson?
Thank you.
We have two members, they have a school committee. And we have two people within Wareham who are on that school committee.
Mm-hmm.
We should bring them in my opinion. Let them explain what's
They
going on.
stole my thunder. I would fully agree. I think we should ask them to come in with Mr. Farr and speak with us. I think it's, they've never met you before, have they?
Yes, they have.
Yes,
They have? Because we were here last year. So we should have
And they're good people and happy to come.
We should have them in as well.
The one thing that I'd say about this is, I agree that sometimes we feel that our hands are tied when it comes to this situation where, there are 4 other towns that have to vote for this. But I know it was last year, it seemed like all 5 towns approved it. And I feel like that this is the time that we just have to say enough is enough. We just can't. And I think that it does send a strong message by just basically stating the differences between the two and just how, I'm sorry, I'll just say, unfair it is to the Wareham children that this continues to happen. But I feel like there's some sort of advocacy that has to go on with some of these other towns, just saying, I believe that Upper Cape provides a quality service to the children, but they also get the best children. Meaning the most high-performing children are the ones with less behavioral issues because they have a system that they go through that they don't take all children. And I just feel that this is the time to advocate as much as we can to the other towns, saying it's time for them to go back and cut a little bit more because the rest of the towns and the rest of the schools, that's exactly what they've been asked to do.
I just skipped.
You got skipped.
I was looking at
We saw you.
All right, for the sake of peace. Mrs. Cthulhu.
I have a couple of questions.
Yes.
Okay.
Quick, will you?
If we're going to table this, we should just
Well,
make sure it's
well, first thing was, I got approached by a mother here in town, and, asking about Upper Cape. And there's a terrible misconception with people not understanding what Upper Cape is about. And their comment to me was, I thought it was like an alternative if you couldn't make it through Wareham High School, it was a place to go and get a trade. Okay, so they misunderstand. Yeah, and I think a lot of people think that that's what it is, where you go to regular high school to go to college,
but if you choose to go to a trade, then you go to a trade school, not understanding the stipulations that are required to get into Alpha K. My other question was, she had also asked me about Bristol Aggie, okay? Now, do we have a contract with Bristol Aggie for certain, do you have any idea what kind of money we're paying them?
Almost twice what Upper Cape is charging.
Really?
Yes.
Could you provide us with that number at some point?
I think, I'm sorry, because I think if Dr. Rabinovich was
Yeah,
here, he could give you that precise number.
The budget, it's in there.
And actually, let me take back the almost twice, because you always get in trouble when you do cost per student. I believe the cost is approaching $20,000 per student.
Okay.
But
Plus transportation too, right?
plus transportation, yes. So whatever it is, but that's the round numbers. It may be 18, something like that.
But my other question is, if we're talking about, getting is it 5 towns, is it what it's 5 towns? Together and saying, we've had enough, this is it, is there an alternative? Is there better bang for our buck at say, New Bedford or something that we could contract and get our children?
We are in
the same
that
education?
consortium, and there's nothing we can do about it.
There's nothing we can do about that.
No, they would just have to do what we're doing, which is cut.
Cut. Upper Cape would have to go back to the drawing board and say, hey, look, we're being level funded. Or let's use that as an example. We're being level funded. Well, that means we've got to cut 6% out of our budget.
It's not needs-based anymore in this world. No more needs-based. It's you need to do the bare minimum, and even less than that.
I got one final thing.
Yes,
I'm
ma'am.
sorry, I'm hogging the time. I know this isn't your budget and maybe you can't answer this, but under transportation, because that's always a subject that's just fun, it says provided by district. Do we provide partial transportation to Upper Bay?
No, they provide transportation, but unlike Wareham, our reimbursement for transportation ended about 2005, and that was $250,000 to the town. They get transportation reimbursement.
Because they're clever.
Yes, because they're pulling students from a region.
Okay, so this has nothing to do with us providing them any
Correct.
transportation. Okay, thank you.
Mr. Trudell, I'd like you, since we were in tables, I'd like to...
Right.
Go ahead.
I'd like to thank Mr. Sweat for providing those statistical things. Those of us like to see numbers go by us with percentage signs and dollar signs, so that was most helpful, thank you.
You're welcome.
The problem that I see with the Upper Cape is a divide and conquer, and we're on the end of the voting list. I'll give you an example. Last year, they needed to put in $3 million worth of window improvements over 10 years. By the time it came to the town, it was a moot question. So each year now, and it's in their budget, is a special assessment. We pay basically $30,000 a year over the next 10 years to cover our share of those windows. It's kind of frustrating when you're sitting there on capital planning looking at this and somebody says, oh, by the way, it's a $30,000 bill, and I'm trying to find money for school windows, library windows, or a piece of equipment, and there's somebody reaches in and just says, oh, by the way, we're part of your assessment, but that's going into our capital plan for $30,000 a year. That's very frustrating, and it's kind of like seeing somebody reach into my capital planning wallet and take money out of it, and I really don't like that. And my discussion.
I just want to be clear, because the last thing I would want to be perceived as doing is bashing Upper Cape.
Absolutely.
That is the antithesis of what I'm trying to get across. I think they do a fine job.
Yes, they do.
If Kevin was here, I would compliment him on the job he does for our 215 or 16 students. It is simply the fact that I think, especially because we take all comers, I think we're doing a pretty good job. We're being asked to cut dramatically, and I don't think they should avoid that pain.
Just real quick, that other school you're talking about, how many students do we send to them, Joe?
Which schools? Oh, very few.
I think 6 or 7.
Yeah, it's less than one hand, maybe, something.
Thank you, that's all I wanted.
Yeah.
Mr. Bronco, I'll entertain your motion to table. Seconded by Mr. Trudell. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? We're sending an invitation.
Yes.
All right, I'll have to talk to the town administrator, we'll have to ask for him, and then also the The two gentlemen that are on the,
Mr. Fichtenmeyer and I'm blanking on the other gentleman.
Kent, is it Kent's Welding? Kent?
That sounds
Is he
right.
still
Kent's
there?
Welding?
Yes.
What's his last name?
It's Kent's Welding.
Dick Williams?
all right, I'll try to see if I can get that.
Dick Williams.
Yes, you're right.
Kent McWilliams.
All right, I'll try to make arrangements for them both to be here next week along with Mr. Farr, if we can get him here. I will also tell you that what surprises me often, I keep telling you, I keep getting the Bourne paper because I live in Buzzards Bay. They started talking to Upper Cape like 2 months ago, 2.5 months ago, with their reps, et cetera, and they actually discussed everything with Upper Cape before they ever took a vote. You know, I'm not talking about the town, but the actual, their members took a vote as part of the school committee. And I think that's probably what's missing on our side, is that we really don't talk to everybody until it's too late.
Who was the board,
Right.
I'm sorry,
Pardon?
question? Who was on the contingent that went and talked to them for more? Was it,
It was the board, they talked to the finance committee, the board, and the board of selectmen. They came in for a joint meeting and explained everything, and the reps were there, and Mr. Farr was there. And like I said, this was a couple of months ago, and as a matter of fact, I believe I found out the numbers for Wareham before you found them out, because it was in the Wareham paper. They met Wednesday, Thursday morning, the numbers in the paper. And, you know, we're also in the situation where Falmouth, I think, is 100,000, we're 220,000. The others are much less in their increases because they only added like one student. So they were an easy 3 votes. And that's another thing that we need, if we're going to go back and make a protest, in any way, or try to get a partner, it's going to have to be whoever else is getting the big hit. Because, I mean, I'm looking at 100 and 200, and somebody else coming in, I think Bourne got hit for 30,000. That was a tough decision for them. It's a no decision.
Or maybe weighted voting.
Rumor has
well, it is weighted voting.
Rumor has
Well,
it that
I believe it is weighted. Is it weighted or
There's
not?
a complicated formula in terms of how much we get charged, but I don't think there's any weighted voting.
I thought it was 2, 2, 2, and 1 was the count. I think Marion had one less person or something. Somebody told me, I don't know.
Oh, you're talking about the school committee?
The
No,
school
but in terms of approval by the towns of the
Okay.
budget, it's not weighted. So the person that has 10 students gets 1 vote, and the person the town that has 10 students gets 1 vote, and we have 215 and we get 1 vote.
We get 1 vote.
rumor has it that there's a town down in Cape that's not real happy with Upper Cape either.
I have a sneaky suspicion I know who it is. I bet their name begins with an F.
It is.
They aren't very
All right,
happy.
what else?
All right, so I'll make arrangements on all that. Next article would be Article 18. Which is going to be to see if the town will vote to appropriate and authorize the treasurer with the approval of the board of selectmen to borrow some money contingent upon approval of the Proposition 2.5 debt exclusion for the purpose of funding the purchase of new or used vehicles for the school transportation department or take any action relative thereto. Chair, I'll entertain a motion for favorable action.
I'll make the motion.
Mr. McDonald,
Second.
second Mrs. Cattouli. Discussion? I think you've said so much.
I'll very briefly give you Plan A, B, and C. Plan A was to take about $1.5 million and change as an operating budget. Use that, and that would have allowed us to operate the fleet for a year. Take the surplus generated by the revolver, plus the whatever 100,000 or so from the meals tax, which we were promised a long time ago, plus whatever capital planning was able to fund, and use all those monies to get into a replacement plan. That was Plan A. That's no longer viable for reasons that I don't need to go into. Plan B is what you see before you, which is to say we take the surplus of the revolver plus a significantly lowered operating budget, $1.3 million and change, and that would give us a budget for operating the department that would not require us to come back to you, but it would use up the surplus in the revolver. And then we would use the debt exclusion money, and we thought we'd have some of the meals tax for Plan B up until a short time ago, but that seems to have disappeared. So we'll probably end up with more used than new, but whatever, that's Plan B. Plan C, just to be clear, is if only necessary if the debt exclusion does not pass. If Plan B does not work because of the debt exclusion failure, Plan C would be to use the revolver and the operating budget to fund a department that is properly funded, and then we would cut services and I suspect it's do fees in a combination that would result in about $200,000 of net surplus, either by spending less or generating fees. The fees would roll into the revolver. The cutting services, 7 through 12, would result in lower operating costs, so that less would have to be taken out of the revolver to support the operating budget. That would generate about $200,000, which is enough to maintain a fleet that is about twice as old as we think is appropriate. In other words, we would end up with an average age of a bus of being about 10 years instead of 5 years. Is this a viable plan?
No.
It's the only plan. I mean, because absent any funding and the legal obligation to provide service K to 6, we have to somehow come up with a plan, and that is literally the only plan. Now, I'll say one more thing about this Plan C. You can talk about fees and what level they should be at any way you want to. But the problem with fees is the higher they go, the fewer the people pay them. So there is a point at which, you might as well stop charging more, because all you're doing is driving away your customers. So it's the belief that probably somewhere around $100 a year would keep people using the buses rather than carpooling, walking, biking. I know that would be lovely in some ways, but we need more sidewalks, and when there are safety issues and all that sort of thing. But the bottom line is, we don't think that we can generate more than about $200,000 in either reduced costs or fees. And that's why Plan C is what it is. Could we, as some towns do, charge $475 per year per child? That's the highest I've seen. Sure, we could do that. Anybody want to bet how many of our 1,100 or so eligible students, meaning, I'm sorry, it would be 1,100 if we didn't cut services, but if you're not going to provide the service, you can't charge the fee. So it actually drops down to about 600 in some children. $475 per child, somehow I don't think that 600 children are going to pay that $475. So the number I want you to keep in your mind is about 200,000, which is about half of what we need, which doubles the age of the fleet.
Before we get into that too, because I had a conversation with somebody today about what Plan C means, particularly in the Minot school. I said, if you take the buses, which will have to drop off students, and you take the parents who are now dropping off their students because they can't afford the $475, and you take the children that are bicycling on their way, and you have the children who are walking because they're under 2 miles, and you roll them all up together in one driveway, and you damn well better have an adequate amount of police all the time. Mr. McDonald?
Fun. I wasn't going to tell a joke, but I decided it's not really funny at this time.
I have a projectile here.
No, this is the one that, the old joke about, someone being in another world, and you're up to here in a cesspool, and someone's firing a flamethrower at you, and you got your choice of standing on your head and getting your feet burnt, or, this is where we're at. It's not a good situation, and I'm a little frustrated by this, because this $360,000 gets you started.
Yes, and as I said at the last school committee meeting, it would be disingenuous, which is why in this explanation our superintendent has put the last sentence. This is the beginning of a replacement plan which voters may approve or disapprove each year. So the $490 for 5 years is a rolling $490, which ultimately will end up with being about $24 a year for the fleet replacement plan.
Oh, so if we continued with this debt exclusion for 5 years, that's gonna give us the 360,000, correct?
No, that'll give us, oh, sorry, that'll give us the 360,000 every year.
Every year,
Ah.
every
well,
year for
that's,
5 years.
Annually, yeah.
It's a rolling, now, you could argue that maybe it should be an override since since there's no plan for ever not having it. The advantage, the appropriateness of the capital, of the debt exclusion is the fact that it is clearly capital because it has a useful life way beyond 5 years and it's expensive. And the advantage to the taxpayers is that at any time they can say, enough, don't want to do it anymore, and they don't have to pass an underride.
I guess when you look at this, the way that it's written, you're doing $360,000. That's the amount you're borrowing, but that's not the amount you're borrowing because now you're saying I'm borrowing $360,000, but I'm financing it over 5 years, and that's not what you're trying to convey right now.
You're gonna borrow $360,000 each year.
Every year.
Right,
For 5 years.
You gotta be, and you've done it a lot longer than I have, and I respect that. But if you lay this out there like that, someone's gonna say, wait a minute, they're trying to back doors. You need to put 360,000 times 5 out there and let people know what's going on, because
No,
They're gonna have to approve this every year.
1 year.
This is still 1 year.
There is,
The article's written for 1 year, for a purchase that'll be paid over 5 years, but what they are cautioning you of is next year, they have to come back with another article.
because that's what I was trying to say.
Yes.
Right, because they need to replace.
I agree with you
5
completely, and I assure you, if I'm lucky enough to be still functioning.
Oh, yeah, it's gotta come back next year.
Right,
That will be-
5 of us
okay.
every year.
That will be said on town meeting floor, which is why I asked the superintendent to put that last sentence in.
Correct.
It would be disingenuous to suggest that this isn't an ongoing replacement plan. And the only good news is that at the end of your 5th year, you at least can say, okay, is this it? In other words, is the 6th year going to keep adding to it? No, it's a 5-year plan, a rolling 5-year plan, and think of it as approximately $25 a year once the rolling is fully implemented.
Well, that's the confusion that I have, because in reality, you're for 5 years, we're financing 300 now don't get me started on the rest of it. Just for, if we pass a debt exclusion, it's for $360,000 over 5 years, and it amounts to this amount. So we're paying for 5 years for this year's.
Correct.
And therein lies the problem for me, because we're getting a start, and I understand that you gotta have a start somewhere, but the problem is, and what I've noticed since I've been around, we get starts and then we forget all about it. We have to be able to come up, this is why it's so important that we have to have a better plan than this to do the buses.
I agree.
So,
Please. There is no one that agrees more with you than I do on this committee. The problem is this. We have been working in a committee atmosphere for over a year. And we have studied this and studied this and studied this. There has been requests for information. It's been given. All the books are open. Everything is available there. We continue debate on whether this is going to continue, that the town is going to continue to run a fleet, or if we should outsource it. I believe that should continue. We should still look at both. But looking at it doesn't solve the problem right now. And this is what I said when we had our joint committee meeting, that what this committee is doing is we're trying to come up with a solution right now, which is a 1-year debt exclusion, so then we can get buses in there, so then we don't have an emergency situation going into next year. But this committee, and absolutely, I'll speak for myself on this one, will be at the table every single time and have as much information available as possible, do whatever studies is needed to actually come to the long-term solution to this. But we cannot put this off any longer. This is the article that needs to pass, so then we have a safe, an effective, just a fleet that we actually can run the transportation going into next year.
do I get to ask one more? And
No,
then
Dr. Silverstein, please.
Okay.
Well, it was, it's kind of what she says, if I can build just on a couple of things. Well, first of all, talking about it is, in my opinion, this is just my opinion, ladies and gentlemen, there is no Plan C. It just doesn't make any sense. Plan C makes no sense to me. So as far as I'm concerned, there is no Plan C. But the thing of it is there is this thought in town that if we don't have our own bus fleet, that somehow or other the bill goes away. The bill doesn't go away. You're always going to have to be saddled with the responsibility of transporting students to school, whether it be 1 through 6, whatever the case may be. The bill doesn't go away. And I think that that's the message that we haven't done a good enough job of getting out there, that no matter how you slice the cake, no matter how you look at it, what your perspective is, whether you want to keep it in-house or privatize it, the bill doesn't go away.
But just a point of information, and keep this in mind, what we're talking about, most of the miles are special education and homeless miles, required by law.
That was my question, thank you.
Mr. Couture?
I understand what Mr. McDonald was getting to, and Dr. Sabut, you almost got there.
I almost got there.
Yeah.
I'll try harder next time.
It's the compounded issue that we want the public to understand, okay? And I love this little chart that says, you know, it's $360,000 and it's going to cost me $4.90 for this year. We understand that we're only asking for this year, and that you want the people to understand that, yeah, we will be coming back for you next year, and we want another $360,000. So now my $490, somebody want to double it and do my math for me? Whatever we're saying is that
Oh, come on.
20, but I understand, 5 years down the line, it's going to be $25.
Right.
Okay? That's what we want the public to understand, that this is a start of a plan. And yeah, I hope everybody keeps looking at other options and deciding, do we want to stay in this business or we don't? But we want the public to understand that this is a start of it now, that that's not the end of it, that there may be additional costs going forward, and what those mean compounded over the 5 years.
Mr. Policy?
I wish I had brought the exhibit, and Barry sent me this about maybe 2 or 3 months ago, but it showed the ages of the buses by year, and then it showed which had passed inspection. And as I recall, 3 of the 5 oldest buses, which I would presume would be the ones that you might replace. I mean, that's, well...
We'll replace the least valuable.
Well, I was thinking, let me, if I might finish, I was thinking you'd replace the 3 of the 5 oldest, but they all passed. So I'm thinking to myself as I read that, and I may have misinterpreted it based on your reaction there, was, gee, if the older buses are okay, why don't we keep using them? They are. They passed inspection. There seems to be no real problem with them. So it's my observation and a question both.
The short answer is, and I don't pretend any special expertise in terms of maintaining buses, but the short answer is, if you have a fleet of 1,000 buses, you know, a large cohort, statistically speaking, you know, some buses, the oldest buses will be the ones you get rid of. But you might end up with the opposite of a lemon. I'm not sure what the opposite of a lemon is. You might end up with a great bus, you know, a great bus that happens to be in good shape at the end of 10 years, or maybe even 15 years. We've all had cars like that. I think my father was an expert at maintaining them. The bottom line is, when you have 50, probably the oldest ones will be the ones you get rid of. But you'll get rid of the ones that are costing you the most to maintain, like the ones we just had to replace engines on.
But that is just the point I'm driving at. It's the point I've tried to make with Barry from time to time, in fact, frequently, that I sit here and I have, and nobody on this committee, to the best of my knowledge, has any really good sense as to what kind of maintenance is going on with these various buses as to exactly what might be done. And I'll give you an example that you may say, well, that's a silly example. Flying around up there right now are 747s that are 30, 40 years old, and they replace the engines, they replace the carpeting, they replace the lighting, but they don't replace the bodies. Now, I understand that we've got a different environment out here with the wind and the snow and the ice. I get all that. But the point I'm trying to get to here, and perhaps poorly, and I apologize for being too wordy on this, is there any way that we can maintain these buses and keep them even though they're 10, 11, 12 years old? And I get back to the 3 of the 5 buses that are over 11 years old that are passing inspection.
As long as you're sitting down, I'm going to shock you. Let me agree with you, okay? Because with due respect to my colleague and friend, Dr. Sylvia, I actually think Plan C is more than just a theory, okay? I think we have to anticipate the fact that this may not be approved, and since we have a legal obligation, Plan C may be what we have to implement. We just have no choice. So we will literally end up with that very situation, a fleet that averages 10 years of age, which means some are going to be a lot older than 10, and we're going to have to do a great job maintaining them, because the alternative is to literally be out of compliance with the law or privatizing and handing the FinCom and the town a bill that is, well, in this case, since we're not investing and the depreciation number means nothing, it would literally be $1 million more than we're spending now.
Once those undercarriages are gone, throw it away. Once the undercarriages are gone, throw it away.
I don't want to pretend any expertise in that area, but I think Plan C is something that the town expects us to have a Plan C. Whether it will work, I will not sit here and tell you Plan C will work, that 5 years from now we'll say, gee, having a fleet that averages 10 years in age, et cetera, et cetera. More importantly, I don't know what only providing service for K to 6 and ignoring the 7 through 12, I don't know the impact on our schools, our parents, and the extra burden of getting their kids to school, and whether absenteeism and truancy and tardiness all rise dramatically. I don't know the answers to those questions. I'm afraid to speculate as to what the answers to those questions will be.
If I can summarize what you presented
Yes.
all this time, though, is that there's an option A, which we don't feel in any way is viable.
No longer viable.
It's no longer viable.
Correct.
So that leaves us only with B and C.
By the way, the biggest reason it's no longer viable is the fact that the revolver needs to support the operating budget.
Which we know it's
It
not.
now has to, because we have officially voted as a school committee to reduce it to the 1.3 that the town administrator said was all he could afford.
Okay, so option A is not viable. So it's a choice between B, which is this article, or C, which is a very draconian plan, but has to be more than likely implemented if this article does not pass.
Yes, but with due respect to my two colleagues here, they haven't voted on it.
Oh, I understand that, but that is the reality of it. It's either we
Yes.
either buy buses or we don't buy them, and each brings a course of action.
Correct.
All right, and that's what we're being asked to decide. Do we say, do we support this, or we don't support it, and do we support it to go to the ballot or not? And I'm going to ask that ask that the favorable motion be withdrawn, because I'd like to reword it.
There's someone behind you that wanted to speak, is that okay?
Depends upon who it is.
Nah.
No. Yes, Tom.
Just a question on the debt exclusion. $360,000 this year, and it will take 5 years to pay off that $360,000?
If you decide.
Well, we've been told by the treasurer collector that that's a reasonable schedule, and that produces the $4.90 per year.
Okay, so now you do that, and at the end of that year, you've got let's call it $5, okay? There's $5. Next year, you come to us with another $360,000.
Yes, that's what we
For
said.
5 years.
Yes.
That's $5. So we've paid 5, now we're paying the next 5 plus the 5 here.
Yes.
Yeah.
So
It's
more than $28 at the end, because you're
No.
adding these things
No,
Some will go offline.
It's literally just adding 490 minus, there may be some inflation, but let's call it 5, okay? It's literally adding 5 times for 5 years, and that's it.
Oh, no, I realize that, but now when you ask next year for the $360,000, that's another $360 for another 5 years.
That's correct. So you're on a rolling 5-year schedule.
Right.
You're on a rolling 5-year schedule for debt,
Right.
but you're on an infinite, so to speak, schedule of debt exclusions. Right? But the advantage is that at the end of the 5th year, the first one you put in is now expired, and you start a new one, so the total is about $25.
But for that first one.
On and on and on.
Excuse me?
For the first debt exclusion that you did 5 years ago, not for the other 4 that came along after.
No, that's not, I don't, if you're saying what I think you are, that's incorrect.
Okay, that's what I'm trying to get straight.
It's think of it as this way, it's $5 year 1.
Right,
It's $10 year 2.
right.
It's $15 year 3, $20 year 4, $25 year 5. Now, the reason it's not going to go to 30, because you're adding $5, is because the first one just fell off.
Just fell off.
Tony, I have a schedule that I can show you, I've actually mapped that
I
out.
think it's how many
Okay.
buses do you
It
get for
comes
that?
up, each year you add so much, and then after that.
Depends on whether they're newer
It's
units,
in
Ford new.
perpetuity unless they vote not to do it.
Okay, because it just
But
sounds
we
to me like
anticipate
it's
they'll be
exactly
used in some
what you
cases.
have.
In some cases, they'll be vans at far less expense.
Tony,
Tony, did that make sense?
I think I understand what you're saying. I think of that.
Larry, would you?
I don't think I have it.
No, would you withdraw your resolution for favorable action?
I withdraw my
And
motion.
the second one?
I will withdraw my second.
And the second's withdrawn, yes. Yes, I would like to, I would like the motion to be worded, that the committee, I'd like a motion for favorable action to place this article on the ballot if approved by town meeting.
So moved. No.
Pardon?
Can we do that?
Wait a
Why
minute.
can't, sure we can.
Hold on, you'd like a motion to what?
I forget what did I say?
Favorable action to be placed
this on
the ballot if
approved by town
If
meeting.
approved by town meeting.
Frank, the moderator has her hand
I
raised.
think what, the reason this is on here, Frank, is because you're voting to authorize the borrowing. You're not authorizing the placement on an election ballot. That only can come from the selectmen. So the reason it's in here, from my understanding, if I understand it correctly, and I will double check with council, it's on the warrant only to authorize the borrowing, because then if it goes to the ballot and gets passed, you have had to authorize the borrowing.
I know we have to go to the selectmen, can I reword it so that there were recommendations to the select?
You can put it in your recommendation, but the only one that can put it on a ballot would be the board of
Oh, I know
selectmen.
that, we're not debating that. The thing is,
But you still have to take a vote on the authorization to borrow. That's the article before you, is the authorization. That's why it's on the warrant. You are only authorization, the borrowing. In the event it does go on the ballot, you have to have that authorization so that when it does pass, if it does pass, you have the authorization to borrow. So that's why it's on the warrant. It doesn't have anything at all to do whether or not it goes on a ballot.
I think we have to vote favorable or not favorable. I mean, we have to do that of this and then make a recommendation in our explanation.
I mean, you certainly could make a recommendation, and further, we recommend that the selectmen place this on the ballot.
Yeah, I don't think we have a choice here.
Yeah.
I'm in a, Mr. Chair, if I may, I'm in a real dilemma here. Because having listened to the school, I know how desperate their situation is. On the other hand, I sit on capital planning and I know how desperate our situation is on the town side. And I know that sooner or later, town's gonna have to belly up because it's gonna run out of options. So I find myself in a situation where I understand the school situation and I understand the town situation. What the school's going through now is probably about a year or 2 years before what the town's gonna have to look at. We're starting down a road, if I will, of heroin addiction. If I'm a seller, it's a great deal, but if I'm a user, it's not so good. And debt exclusions, Proposition 2.5, are options I don't have as a homeowner. When I run out of money at home, and my roof needs repair, I have to go see if I can find credit. But all that credit does is buy me time. Point that I make is, somehow, government has got to find a way to live within its means. We have no checks and controls on health care. We have very little checks and controls on the cost of utilities. As we pointed out 5 years ago, It does not matter what we do. Our increase of expenses like this, and our ability to generate revenue was like this. We knew we'd come to a brick wall sooner or later. We're arriving at that brick wall. How do I vote when I know it's not just the school that I'm looking at? I'm also looking at the town. The brick wall is running towards us. And if you think that putting money into it helps, we put a mall online, and for 2 years previously, we spent $1 million that we didn't have. We got rid of school funding, and it saved us $1 million. And out of that $1 million, I saw $64,000 come to capital. And for me, this is a really bad situation. I can favor putting this on the ballot, but let the community decide.
But it automatically has to go on the ballot. This is an exclusion.
I mean,
This is wrong.
I mean, come on. The chief got up there and went for safety, safety, safety. What is more important than the safety of our children? Now, I don't have children in the school system anymore either, but darn, we've got to protect these children, and we have put this off and put it off, and the can has come to the end of being kicked. It's more important than maintaining some buildings, in my opinion. We have a responsibility to the children of this town, and this is a no-brainer. I mean, we haven't done anything. It's a safety issue. I say we put it on for favorable action, and we take our vote and let it go as it is.
In light of the comments by the town moderator as well, since it's not, as she says, it is an authorization to borrow, and we surely have the right with our recommendations to state both sides.
Exactly. Exactly.
But that also means that people who might support putting it on the ballot would wind up voting unfavorably against this authorization. And I think some people feel very strongly to go to the ballot, but would hesitate to vote in favor of the debt exclusion. That's the problem. But, in light of what the moderator has said, I'll accept the motion for favorable action.
So moved.
The second.
Second.
And second, Mrs. Cratulli. Any discussion of this current motion? Seeing none, all in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Opposed?
Opposed.
That'd be 5-1.
What do we have? What is it? I'm sorry?
5-1-0.
Dominic, how to do it?
Article 19 is to see if the town will appropriate and authorize the treasurer with approval of the board of selectmen to borrow some money contingent upon the approval of the proposition 2.5 debt exclusion for the purpose of funding repairs to the Wareham High School gymnasium roof, including ancillary costs for taking any action relative thereto. Have a motion for favorable action?
So moved.
Second, Mr. McDonald. Discussion?
I think it speaks for itself.
The roof's leaking, and gotta fix it.
Is this the total cost? Or-
For the gyms only.
Just the gym.
Just the gym.
Okay, tell me the real story. How bad is the whole roof?
Well,
We don't need,
It's
I'm
48
going to catch you off. I kept Mr. Paulson off before. I'm going to cut you off. All right, is there any other questions?
just as a footnote,
I can tell you 2
You're cut
words.
off too.
Pretty bad.
I have a motion, unless it's directed to the question, I'm not going to want to go home. In that case, please. Seeing no conversation to this address, this borrowing authorization. All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed?
Opposed.
5-1-0. Article number
20.
page 20. To see if the town will vote to appropriate and authorize the treasurer with the approval of the board of selectmen to borrow some of money contingent upon approval of the proposition 2.5 debt exclusion for the purpose of funding the purchase of instructional materials for use in Wareham Public Schools and take any action relative thereto. Need a motion for favorable action?
So moved.
Second, Mrs. Cratulli seconded, Mr. Brown. Discussion? Mr. Paulson?
I have a philosophical objection that just, or observation and objection that goes back many years, and that is to use debt to pay for the things that are operational in nature. I'm going to vote against this.
Any other discussion?
It was my understanding that this is the new software and books for the new required curriculum. Am I correct?
It is not replacement, it is new, correct.
Any further, do you want to explain that further or in any way? Or
No, but I'll be happy to take questions. I think it's fairly self-explanatory. And I will say that the reason we have traditionally done this as an operating expense, but in fact it was this committee that convinced us it was appropriate to spread the costs over a number of years because they, in fact, last quite a number of years. And more importantly, this was a way to reduce the operating budget and hopefully get the money in a different way, which freed up more money for the town, et cetera, et cetera. So it was a compromise, and hopefully a worthwhile one.
Well, to clarify that a little more, it was the suggestion of a member of the committee who attended the Mass Municipal Association Capital Planning Seminar, which was held the second day of the conference. A number of towns are doing this for both their computers and in a case where it is a whole new program and has not a replacement cycle, but is a very large amount that's been mandated to them that they have to make this particular purchase. What they look at is the life of the materials, much as a business would do when it came in with like new software, as you were mentioning. What's the life of the software? If the software, or what's the tax code say the life is? All right, and so it runs like 5 years. These textbooks, curriculums being brand new in literacy and mathematics, I believe the estimate is 5 to 7 years. All right, so it fits with the bond, it fits with how we can bond it, 5 to 7 years, actually 5 years. So I brought that recommendation back from Mass Municipal because the reason why other towns are doing it as well is rather than hitting one group, one set of students right up front, or 1 year on the tax bill up front, they're using what they like to call the fairness principle. If you're going to use it over 5 years, let people pay it over 5 years. The people that are going to actually use it, et cetera, the community that's going to use it. That's part of the whole reason to bring it back that way. Replacements of these same books going forward would not be capital items. They're expense items. So it's a little bit of change of policy, but it also provides us the opportunity that when something is mandated, we don't have to swallow $200,000 all at once. The computers are a little different story, right? There are it's new technology, it's new software in many cases, and it's absolutely necessary for the students to have. Otherwise, they have problems when they graduate from high school and go out into the workaday world and find out that they're using Windows 95, and there's this mystical thing now called Windows 7.
8 is coming this year.
It's already out there.
So that's the reason why I brought this back to them, saying think about it. And like I said, this is a practice this is done in many communities in Massachusetts. But yeah, it was me.
Good job.
Had to pay my own way. Mr. McDonald?
I'm not asking you to promise me anything at this point. This is another one of those mandated things that went unfunded, correct? I mean, from an overall standpoint, I don't want to get into the nitty-gritty details, but this is something they're saying, you're going to change curriculum, and oh, by the way, we're not going to give you any money to do it. So, when I'm looking at these things, and this is not, all these relate somehow or another to the underfunding from the state level for our school, in my opinion. State and federal funding has dropped off. If we're going to, I'll keep talking until you get back, Bonnie. If we're going to make headway, we can't continue to talk about that. Yes, we're going to make some. We're going to take it on the chin as citizens, but somewhere along the line, we have got to approach the state and federal government on some level to get this money back. How are we going to do that, or are we just gonna talk about it? Because if we're just gonna talk about it, then we're gonna keep doing this every year.
Let me, it may be worth,
Well, first of all, we'd be doing it every year. That's what this is a new program. Oh, if they had a new program, say, an English.
no, we're not
program
gonna have,
here.
this is not a every year thing.
These things are,
I understand that, but
are
this
well
is-
planned out.
No, no, you're missing my point. In the overall picture of the school, we're talking about different things, and probably some of this is coming from the mandates from the state and federal government. Not, and over a period of time, we built up this deficit because of them. So I'm saying is, as we go forward, we're approving these debt exclusions, we're looking at them, but can we look at this from the standpoint that, you know, how do we enforce them using the formula to get us more money? How do we go back against the state and federal government to get more money? If we're just gonna sit here and talk about, you know, they're not giving us enough money, we gotta do
You
something.
do that by liability or litigation?
No, Mr. Chair.
I'm sorry,
Just-
lobbying or litigation?
There's a parallel plan that's going on. So at the, there is, at the state
Right.
level, there is
That's my answer.
advocacy. I just wanted to, there is advocacy going on at the state level. And if anybody wants to get involved at the state level, we can give you the information on how you can contact your congressmen and your senators and speak up on that. So there is work being done.
Yeah, as I said, it's lobbying or litigation.
Yeah, but I need to, in the spirit of candor, I just spent all yesterday morning on Beacon Hill. Our friends on Beacon Hill, people who used to be on school committees, who are now House Ways and Means. I think she was either the chair or the vice chair of House Ways and Means. Education committees, et cetera, et cetera. They spoke to all these school committee members. I can summarize in a few sentences what they said. They are not even going to, they have sent the adequacy study for Chapter 70 back to committee. Not going anywhere. Their excuse for it, well, Desi said they were going to do something, so we'll wait for Desi to do it. We are spending more than twice as much on Medicaid, essentially, as we're spending on education. By the way, that's not just K-12. They're also talking college and universities in this state. More than twice as much, and education is, quote, controllable, because they can certainly turn off the spigot and say, towns, it's your problem, whereas healthcare, it's mandates. They've got a law and they're taking care of people. The bottom line is we were told it ain't getting better, and it ain't getting better sooner even, and later is hard to figure. So I don't think I came away with zero optimism. And on top of that, there is a bill that is going to look at requiring people to stay in school until they're 18 years of age. All that's going to do is fill up our cooperative, which I suppose is a good thing in some ways. It's fill up our cooperative because there are a lot of kids who don't want to be in school, and trying to force them to stay in school is not possible. So we're going to have, and teachers are going to be miserable with kids who are, so they are, talk about insensitive to the problems of what's really going on in cities and towns. It's unbelievable. But I left with zero optimism that any funding or advocacy, which is going on, will have any impact, because even our friends in the legislature are saying, don't look at me.
But you know, getting back to what Larry said, you know, Larry, you said that, you know, we have to keep going back, you know, to the government, to the state, to get our money for this and that. It's still the town's problem.
Well, that's what this is all about.
Yeah, you know, just go to the state for every time.
Mr. Paulson?
It is absolutely impossible to get the state and the federal government ever help us again. Not going to happen, ever.
I think we already heard that.
When I was going back to the MMA meeting, and I was there for at the same time you were, but different workshops, the state of Massachusetts, the Commonwealth of Massachusetts, has a $15 billion, not million, $1 billion obligation, unfunded liability for GASB 45, for OPEB, for employee benefits for retirees. It's got to be paid, and every year that goes by adds another $1 billion. This town has an $87 million obligation, and we're not trying to meet that. We never talk about it. Nobody talks about it. Some of us know about it. But the $15 billion, the state is very much aware of that. The people on these various committees, they know they have to start funding it. At the federal level, the number is $61 trillion. 61 trillion. There's no amount of growth that's going to, and there's no amount of money that's going to come from the federal government. We're on our own. That's it. Don't even think about going to the state. Don't even think about going to the federal government. There's only going to be cuts, 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 cuts. I know that sounds rather negative, but...
Now you go to a funeral so I can go get cheered up, okay?
No, this wasn't...
The reality
Depends
is,
whose it is.
those of us who are older citizens can remember
speak up?
Proposition, yeah, thank you. Proposition 2.5 was passed by homeowners because they couldn't control the way taxes were going. It was a desperate situation. But those of us who remember even the days before that recall one thing: unfunded mandates from the state. They're unending. They don't stop. The old phrase, when the legislature's in session, your dog and your heart are in danger, is true. But the reality is, when do we say no? When do we say, I can't implement this because I don't have any money? When do you finally say, I can't afford what you have just given to me? Give me an option here, state. Because all we're doing is continue to feed them. And you're right, Dick, there is going to be no hope. Because they're so far under they can't see up.
That's right. We've gone over the cliff.
Any further discussion on this article? Seeing none, all in favor?
Aye.
Opposed?
Opposed.
4-3.
What was the vote, I'm sorry?
4-3,
Thank you.
favorable. Next article is Article 21, which is to see if the town will vote to accept general laws, Chapter 71, Section 71F, to authorize the school committee to use revolving fund to be credited with all monies received by the school committee as tuition payments for non-resident students. Receipts held in such account may be expended by the school committee without further appropriation for expenses incurred in providing education for students or take any action relative thereto. Would you explain this, because I think everybody's in a little bit...
What the heck are we looking at?
There's a mistake. 21.
Oh.
This is the revolving fund.
The revolver, right.
This is simply to, I believe this is the one that simply gets us to the point where we don't run into that 1% problem, which is to say, if the amount of money we generate in the revolver exceeds 1% of, and I believe it's the town budget, then...
Tax levy.
Yes, the tax levy.
Tax levy.
Then we've got a problem. And that makes no sense. So if you shift it from the chapter it's in now to Chapter 71, you don't have that restriction. It does not relieve us of the responsibility not to spend any more than the revolver generates. It just gives us the freedom to spend what it does generate. That's all.
And the revolver has to be spent on what the revolver is for, not outside of it.
Correct. It's restricted by the nature of the revolver and the amount of money in the revolver.
The establishment, my understanding is the establishment of this as a Chapter 44 revolver was an accounting error.
I can't speak to that.
It should have been done under Chapter
Our other
71.
revolvers are set up in the new account.
Right, it should have been a 71, and it was set up as a 44
Correct.
based on the recommendation.
Whether it was a mistake, I don't know, but we're rectifying the problem.
Will this cover your revolving transportation fund, and will it cover all of your revolving funds?
No. They're separate revolvers. Transportation is already a Chapter 71 revolver.
Okay.
Separate and distinct.
So this is just for one revolver, or?
Yes.
There are two articles on there for two different revolvers that are categorized as 41 that we want to move to.
And the reason they can't be combined is because each dollar is restricted to be spent on that specific area.
Kindergarten has to spend on kindergarten, and transportation on transportation.
Would the funds also be subjected to the 30B procurement laws in any form or fashion? Because that's a concern to me. That
Yes.
Okay.
That's the short answer.
That's because
Except if you're talking about procurement of, say, a vehicle. If you're talking about paying a salary of a teacher, No.
No, well, you know what, I mean, from a
Yeah.
capital standpoint.
From a capital
So our 30B,
Yes.
it's still subject to those as well, okay?
Yes.
Further questions? Seeing none, all in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Wow, 700.
Abstain, so you can keep this correct.
I know.
Can we reload the other one?
Chapter 22, Article 22, to see if the town will vote to accept general laws, Chapter 71, Section 47, to authorize the use of a revolving fund to be credited with funds received by the school committee in connection with the conduct of activities provided for under Chapter 71, Section 47, or any other activity not expressly provided for in that chapter, but sponsored by the school committee in participation, and it's right, in which participation is contingent upon the payment of a fee by the participant. Such funds to be deposited with the treasurer and held as a separate account and expended by the school committee without further appropriation or take any action relative thereto. Shall I entertain a motion? So moved.
Sure.
Mr. McDonald seconds. Conversation, discussion, questions?
What's this particular fund for?
Does he have to school activity, right?
No, it's kindergarten,
This,
Kindergarten.
I believe this is the kindergarten.
Kindergarten.
And
Your explanation that's here says the intent of this article is to replace the current revolving account that was set up under Chapter 44 for kindergarten and preschool tuitions.
a minority, thankfully, of our kindergarten is half-day. The full day generates some dollars. That's the only reason, because there is revenue.
Are we at 22 or 23?
We're on 22. Any further discussion?
Wait just a second. Did we talk about in one of these things, oh, I'm sorry, I should have been more formal on that. Wait a second, Mr.
I have
Chair.
no idea what you're...
Did we not talk about on that sheet from the Wareham Public School cuts, they're cutting out? Maybe we did.
I don't believe so.
The explanations are...
It wasn't kindergarten, were you talking about a cut?
No, I'm reading, I'm
Yeah.
looking at it, it said explanations that I have here. The explanation's wrong.
All right, I just wanted to make sure that we weren't cutting out kindergarten.
We were cutting out,
That's what that's
Some-
for. This
well,
one-
we're cutting out quite a few things, but not kindergarten. As a matter of fact, as a result of the way,
I apologize, we had an explanation in here.
I'll shut up.
Oh, no, it's just,
It's okay.
So it's not kindergarten, or is it?
all right, the article states, any other activity not expressly provided for in that chapter but sponsored by the school committee in which participation is contingent upon the payment of a fee by the participant. Such funds to be deposited with the treasurer and held in a separate account and expended by the school account without further appropriation. Sounds like any activity pursued by interest.
Which is full-day kindergarten.
That's Article 23.
I wish I had it in front of me.
Yeah, is 22 that we have to then, because there's 4 articles revolving the revolvers. One is to go to change it, and then the other one is to then transfer the funds over.
Okay.
So that probably was the revolver for, that you guys just voted on, and then this is to move it from one account to the other. Then you're gonna get the one with the kindergartner, and then the article after that, you have to move it.
Why would it not state kindergarten and preschool in the article itself? We can't change the wording, but I would have thought it would have done that.
I'm sure legal had a reason for that, because the 23 is the transfer from the old kindergarten revolving. 24 is transfer from the special ed revolving.
All right, 22 is to allow it to go to Chapter 71 for kindergarten and preschool. My fault.
Are you all set?
Are you all set?
Correct.
Okay.
All right, any other discussion? Now that I've caused confusion. Seeing none, all those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? 700. Article 23, to see if the town will vote to transfer account balances of the preschool and kindergarten tuition revolving account established under Chapter 44, Section 53E and a half, as of June 30th, 2012, to the tuition revolving account established under Chapter 71, Section 47, or take any action relative thereto. So you're transferring the funds from the 44 to the 71.
Correct.
Okay. Motion?
Motion favorable action.
Okay. Motion second?
Second.
Second, Bonnie. Any discussion? Seeing none, all those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Abstentions? 700. Article 24, to see if the town will vote to transfer account balances of the special education tuition revolving account established under Chapter 44, Section 53, E&a-half as of June 30th, 2012, to the tuition revolving account established under Chapter 71, Section 71F, or take any action relative thereto. So housekeeping article. Motion?
Favorable action.
Motion for favorable action by David, second. Second Larry. Any discussion? Seeing none, all those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Abstentions? 7-0. Article 25, to see if the town will vote to appropriate a sum of money from the Transportation Revolving Fund to purchase or lease new and/or used vehicles for the school transportation department or any action relative thereto. Motion for favorable action?
I'll move the discussion.
I'll second it for discussion.
Ooh, that is something for discussion.
Ooh, I like that. You're a rough guy.
Motion, Mr. Cotillion. Mr. McDonald, seconded. All those in favor? No, sorry. Discussion? What is discussion?
No, she asked first.
Well, it's just that, I understand when I first heard this, you reduce the operating, non-net school spending down to the 1.3. Can you just explain, what your plans are as far as, using this money towards any replacements?
Yes. Plan B or Plan C, Plan B would take all of the surplus that was generated by the revolver and use it to support the operating budget, because the difference between the two is about 200,000, plus or minus. Actually, we're cutting more than 200,000. We hope we'll generate 200,000 in surplus. That's a questionable thing because it represents entrepreneurial activity, shall we say, and we can only hope. But so the idea is that the revolver would support the activity of the operating budget to the extent that the operating budget didn't have sufficient funds. There would be, under the Plan B scenario, no use or very little use of the revolver to replace any vehicles whatsoever. Plan C is an entirely different story. And this gets to the issue of the sequencing of the articles. I would love it if the debt exclusion article of $360,000 came before this article, because it would have an impact on this article. Failing the debt exclusion for $360,000, then all of the fees, assuming the school committee voted to do that were generated by the parents, would flow into here. Plus, because we would be spending less in the operating budget because we'd be operating a smaller fleet with fewer drivers, then we would be much closer, by about 130,000 specifically, to level funded operating budget. That difference would stay in the revolver, supported by the fees, and hopefully produce a certain amount of money to do a modest amount of replacement. The short answer is, when it says a sum of money, the motion will have to have a sum of money, and I would expect that we'd settle on some number like maybe maximum of 300,000 just to be safe. But of course we couldn't spend any more than was in there. But that would be used for the replacement of vehicles as part of Plan C to offset the fact that the debt exclusion didn't pass.
Can I follow up?
Yes.
I'm not any authority on this whole purchasing capital expenditure, but it just kind of sets up a red flag.
It would still go to the town administrator, by the way.
Well, that's what I want town meeting to understand, whatever that procedure has to be to authorize the purchasing when you get to that point. That, are you going to wind up back at town meeting because you didn't get authorization?
No, there's two hurdles. One is town meeting has to authorize. That's what this is for.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. The second hurdle is you still have to go through the procurement process.
Okay.
Which winds you back up at town meeting if you're going to procurement process.
No, because it's been authorized.
Can I just say one thing? So right now, the revolver the way it's set up, does not allow us to purchase vehicles through the revolver. We have to go to town meeting, get appropriation to use the revolver to purchase vehicles. That's what this does. So all it's saying, I really don't think that we're going to use the revolver on transportation, on vehicles, because we're going to need it for the operating budget. But say that we did, say that somehow the transportation department won the lottery, that we would like to be able to use the revolver to purchase vehicles. And if we didn't pass this year, then we would have to wait until the next town meeting to be able to purchase vehicles.
Now, just to follow up, there's going to come a point where you're saying this is basically plan B.
C.
C. All right, well, whatever alphabet we're at, if everybody goes through and just suddenly decides to be generous and say, sure, to all this, do you see where I'm going with this?
Then the sum of money,
It's a finite sum of money.
yes, that it's certainly finite, but then the sum of money that would be used to, then the sum of money, it's complicated by the fact that fees will not be flowing in, but we also won't need that money, any of that money, to purchase any vehicles. So there's going to be that much less money in the revolver, and there would be really no point, because we currently have the authority to use the revolver to support the operating budget. What we don't have is the authority. It now appears, although there are legal arguments to the contrary, but who cares? We've given up on that. We don't have the authority to purchase replacement vehicles. That's what this specifically does.
It just increases our capacity to use the revolver. That's all it really does.
I see what happens when things get purchased without.
No, but you still got to go through the same purchasing. You still have to do the purchasing protocols.
By the way,
here's the thing. And I'll give you a good example. I'm going to be police chief tonight, and I said I come in here, I want to buy three police cruisers. We say sure, because our men and women need them out there, because these vehicles get a lot of miles on it. Well, that word cruiser is a big word. You see what I'm saying? So now we've authorized someone to purchase something, and what we were thinking, or at least what I was thinking at the time, was something totally different than what happened.
See, I don't see that the same way. I just see this as saying, if you have the money and if you intend to use it to buy vehicles, this gives you the authority to do it.
But you're saying vehicles, and we're talking buses in our head.
Buses.
Yes.
Well, but that's not what you're saying. You're saying vehicles.
Buses.
See what
Oh,
I'm saying?
whoa. Good point, because we want the authority to buy 7D vans.
Right.
Because in some cases, that'll be the right purchase.
Right.
Okay, I'm just uncomfortable with this personally.
But you're authorizing us to use the revolver, not to purchase, but
That's correct.
to authorize us to use the revolver to purchase the vehicles.
Right, but you're saying that in most cases with a purchase, especially a large dollar purchase like that, a purchase would have to come to town meeting. But now you're saying this is the article.
No, we still have to go through the procurement. We still have to go through the town administrator.
Time out. This is going to town meeting. How much more specificity do you want?
No, I understand that, but you're using a very generic thing at town meeting. You're saying this gives you the right to go out and purchase vehicles. You're not saying how many vehicles. You're not saying what type of vehicles.
And it doesn't say we're going to do it.
Two things about
But
that.
it says that you have the right to do it.
Yes, two things about that.
We're debating it, and really, you seem to be missing.
But I think there's confusion.
And I think he's missing the point in that you're not, all you want is permission to take the money out of the account once it has passed town meeting. Because
Correct.
all vehicles
Exactly.
must go to town meeting.
That's
the
what
charge.
I was trying to say, but they're saying they don't have to come back to town meeting.
No, they're not saying that. They're saying they need the authority.
This is going to town meeting. What am I missing?
No. They are specifically saying.
They're saying they don't have to go
not
back to
have
town
go back
meeting.
to town meeting
Listen closely
to
here.
purchase the vehicles.
Not forever, just this year.
No.
All right, Mr. Chairman, let me say this. We're going to put a sum of money in there in the article. Let's say it's $250,000. I don't know what it is, but we haven't picked a number yet for the motion. We're going to specify that is going to be used to purchase vehicles, which could be big buses, small buses, vans, whatever is necessary to support the transportation department. And guess what, town meeting? You're not going to have to supply that money. Okay? We're going to generate it ourselves through the revolver. And town meeting, we're going to do this every year. Okay, we're gonna come back and tell you what we'd like to do. I'm not sure how much, do you want the vehicle identification numbers of the vehicles? How much specificity do you want?
I want to know what you're buying. I don't want to say, here's $200,000, go buy whatever you want to buy, because that's what you're asking us to do.
Mr. Trudell,
Okay.
Yes.
get the capital planning.
The town charter says that capital planning has to approve all vehicle purchases. This also affects non-net spending, because even though our approval still has to get through the purchase process, which is the town administrator. Right. Do we concede that point?
Yes.
Yes. Okay. Now, in fairness, we understand how that process works. But we cannot try and say that we want to specify what vehicles. And I'll give you an example. Dr. Rabinovich bypassed the checks and balances, didn't come to capital planning or town administrator until after the fact, but he had a sped vehicle that died. He took action with $91,000. He was either going to spend a small fortune with transporting them,
Probably
he went
contract.
to get
By
permission,
contract. Exactly.
or he was going to spend $90,000, of which a bulk of it would have been spent trying to get permission to buy
I
it.
understand what you're saying.
Given the age of our buses and our fleet, why I'm somewhat uncomfortable with this, because I worry about bypassing the checks and balances. I do think that the school committee has got to be able to have some funds available for when one of these buses dies, that they can immediately take action, because there are some vehicles there are no replacements for. And those of us who have looked at this fleet are depressed. We just need, in my opinion, to give them some options.
Can I
Will
vote?
they probably break the rules? Yeah, but
Well, I'm not even,
Please,
I'm done.
are you done?
I'm done.
I just make it simple. I understand what you're saying, but what we're now talking about is the word sum of money. Well, they haven't even decided how much they're gonna put in there yet.
As much as they can.
Well, I understand that, but then we open up the, I don't know, you know what?
No, but it's coming from outside sources. I mean, we're estimating what we're gonna get from outside sources. It's not coming from the operating budget.
All right, I understand. Where we're at, we're sitting at right now, it's about all this conversation is. All right, you're looking for the ability to purchase without going to town meeting, all right, which is specifically not allowed by the charter.
Thank you.
It's not allowed. The charter is very specific. Capital items must be approved by town meeting.
And I guess our view is this is going to town meeting.
This only, but this gives you the right in perpetuity if you put
No,
some money in there.
for 1 year.
I'd like to table this until we have a chance to talk to council. I want to make sure we're all clear on this.
You know-
No, the problem is if I voted, then we have to go round and round in circles. to
No.
get the decision to re-vote it.
I have no control whatsoever whether you table or not table.
Right.
That is totally your discussion. But I am sitting here wanting to scratch my eyes out.
Why?
Because it's like heads you lose, tails you lose. No matter what this town, this school committee, or this school department, or this transportation does, it doesn't get any money to do anything, even though the buses are aged beyond belief. And when we generate money to do something that costs the taxpayers nothing, we're still being told, nah, we're not sure that's enough specificity. I have had it with trying to run the schools with no cooperation whatsoever.
It's not a matter of cooperation, it's a matter of legality, and I'm just trying to.
Legality? This is legal.
It's a charter.
Town council has told us it's legal. I'm sorry, Frank, I'm just frustrated. I apologize.
I had the same conversation earlier in the day. And you know, the exact same conversation.
We have a motion and we
Okay.
haven't seconded.
Pardon?
Don't we have a motion and we haven't seconded?
Right,
Do
the
we vote on it?
conversation you wanted to.
Yeah, I understand where you're coming from, I do, and I understand the having contingency in the event that something breaks down. But there are people that have a great deal of control problems with town meeting, and they think that that's what they're supposed to do. And I understand that. But we're under the same situation with the EMS service, where they run a profitable service, but they can't purchase a vehicle with the money that they bring in either. They don't have that authorization. So it's kind of like, do we follow the charter, right to the letter of the law? I feel as though we need to discuss that with town council before voting on this particular article.
I would be more than happy to have anybody else take control over this process, if they would actually do something. But in fact, this process is being totally controlled and nobody is purchasing anything. So I am, as far as I'm concerned,
We're not in
I'm
disagreement.
failing in my fiduciary responsibility to the children of Wareham. Take control. It's all yours.
Any, looking for a motion to table?
Motion to table.
Second? Have a second to table?
Oh, second. Do I need to withdraw my original motion? No?
No.
Okay.
All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed?
Opposed.
Aye.
I'm opposed to
What do you want to do with it?
I'm on
You're
board.
opposed to tabling? What do you want to do?
Aye.
You vote the original motion?
Yes, I
Yes,
do.
I'll give it back to the original motion.
So you're gonna, wait a minute, we're, as the finance committee, you're gonna authorize purchasing without going through town meeting?
That's not what
That's
not what it is.
I'm sorry, I don't see it either. We have a motion on the, we have a motion and it's seconded and
No, I'm
I
trying
think.
to understand this. The motion is to allow purchases out of this fund without going to town meeting.
It's not town's money.
And the town charter says that you have to go to town meeting.
It's generated with town property.
This is not, I'm telling you, they are not the only one in this situation.
Can we get a revote on
Can we get what?
Can we get a revote on the motion to table?
No,
No, but not when the
no,
table
I think it's,
Fine.
If I might just, you're asking a question, you want an answer, or is it your question rhetorical?
It's somewhat rhetorical. You know, you're asking the chair to, you're asking me to allow a vote on something that's against the charter.
Your opinion.
That's right.
Your opinion.
That's not, that's already come down.
No, I'm sorry, that's your opinion. You're reading the charter the way you want. I don't
No,
take that.
when we leased the cruisers originally, the opinion was that even though they were leased and being used, we still had to go to town meeting for authorization. So we have precedent. We have precedent.
Who's Mr. Slater? He be jumping up and down.
We're back to the original
Mr.
motion.
Slater would be along with the same ones, and you know, we're catching.
I'm going to have to vote against the motion because you are correct in what you're saying.
I'm not trying to be impossible, it's just this conversation has been held so many times. And it's been the council so many times. I want to go back one more time and make sure we can bring this to the floor. And I don't want the committee to be on the wrong side of legal counsel.
Point of information?
No, that's all right. All those in favor?
No,
All those in favor of the motion?
The motion.
I'm sorry, I thought you wanted to vote on the motion.
What motion? We just.
The original
The
motion?
motion for the original motion is for favorable action.
Wait a second, was that withdrawn?
I never withdrew.
No.
You never withdrew a motion, that's what Don was saying. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
3.
This is the, okay.
A motion in favor of this motion. All opposed?
No,
No. 3-4.
that's not what I wanted.
No, it's not
That's
what
not
I
what I
wanted.
wanted out here. Sorry, Frank.
I will be looking for reconsideration of it. No.
Can I ask?
340.
340. Article 26, to see if the town will vote to raise and appropriate contingent upon the approval of the Proposition 2.5 override, a sum of money to avoid teacher layoffs or take any action relative thereto. Have a motion?
So moved.
Is there a second? Discussion? Any other discussion? All those in favor? All those opposed?
Opposed.
Wait,
Are you
that one real quick.
What?
What are we talking about here?
Article 26, to see if the town will vote to raise an appropriate contingent upon the approval of a Proposition 2.5 override, a sum of money to avoid teacher layoffs or take any action relative thereto.
And there's a dollar figure on the
It's $780,000. Am I
I
correct?
have a motion, I have a second. Is there any discussion? I mean, there's no fixed amount on this right now, it's just a sum of money. They're suggesting it would be $780,000. I would imagine that would be amended on the floor.
Let me read through this. I'm just trying to read through it.
I couldn't get the vote because they didn't put their hands up.
Oh, well, you went come back. I'm ready.
So the difference, just for clarification, debt exclusions last for a period of time. Overrides go on forever.
So you aren't overriding.
Until there's an underride.
Do you anticipate an underride anytime?
Not in my lifetime.
Mine either.
And that could be shorter than you know.
I hope not, Jeff. I'm sorry.
May I make a comment?
Sure.
This is pretty specific, this particular article, in that it pinpoints the teacher layoffs, which the school committee has said is $780,000. My only concern is that with all of the other budget cuts on the town side, there may be some employees who say, well, what about our job, what about our job, what about our job? I do feel favorably on the article as it's written right now to say the teachers. I'm going to pretty much leave it up to town meeting floor as to how many jobs they'd like to save beyond that. But
I think I actually know.
that's said.
Can I follow up on that?
Yes, you may.
See, my problem is, you're right. The people on the town side are gonna say, what about us, what about us? They had just the same opportunity that the school committee and the school had to write overrides or debt exclusions, and they didn't. So the school committee's being proactive, whereas maybe the town's not so proactive, if you will. So it doesn't make me support what they're trying to do any less because the town didn't do that. So that's just my opinion, so.
Mr. Chair?
Yes.
And just so you know, you did receive another piece of paper here tonight that there are additional cuts. Again, this is just for the teachers, and so, you know, when we are talking through, the school has made additional layoffs and cuts. This is just, you want to be able to say.
Oh, yeah, he still says $780,000.
And I guess this is, well, it's,
So,
no, well, it doesn't belong here, because you're just voting on the article, but if it doesn't pass, and if it's not voted on, I mean, by the townspeople, that there's not only gonna be layoffs, there's gonna be other cuts, there's gonna be draconian cuts in the school department. If this doesn't pass the voters, I'm telling you right now, we have dismantled public education in Wareham, in my opinion, just dismantled it. And I don't know how we're gonna ever recoup from it. I really don't.
any other comments?
No.
No? Mr. Sweat?
One question that has been asked me, which I think is germane to what Ronnie is talking about, and the question that has been asked multiple times of me on the street is, if I vote for this, how do I know that this money will be used the following year for the same purpose? And the answer is, there is zero guarantee whatsoever. So, just...
Can't the ballot vote be specific?
No.
You can't?
And for this year, for next year?
It goes into the general fund, and then this process, God help us, goes on again a year from now. And the allocations, the prioritization, et cetera, will go through the same process. We'll simply be $780,000 better off But how that $780,000 gets used will be up to this body to recommend, the school committee to recommend, and the voters to decide.
And also, will it go, oh, sorry, I didn't mean to interrupt. But it will be controlled by who? That after this year, when we were sitting there talking about teachers, that's what it is for this year. Next year, they got $780,000. Now, who owns that 78, 700?
TA.
So if he decides he doesn't want to fund your school, he can go out and fund whatever he wants.
That's correct.
No, it is still up to the voters on town meeting.
Correct.
Okay, but as far as proposing,
Right.
he can propose whatever he
You
wants.
can rest assured, if he does that, he's going to have one king-size fight on his hand in town meeting.
Okay, that's what I want to know.
Whoever he is.
He or she.
He or she, Mr. Trudell.
So, in the second year, we're relying on the honesty and integrity of dealing with the same issue that we did with meal tax.
You didn't really want to say that, did you?
I did, because I would like to see the school get some of that money.
This does happen at the state level all the time. The
Yes.
first year is always designated, and then after that, it's in the general fund. And the original program you intended disappears.
You know, and I know you've heard it before, this group has heard it before, and we've come before you, and you've been in enough joint meetings, and you've heard it before. We have been chipping away over the last 10 years, chipping away at the academic integrity of our school department. And now we're no longer chipping away, I mean, we're taking a jackhammer to it. And, I mean, there's just no place to go. And, you know, this took an awful lot of debate at the school committee level in the superintendent and meetings and budget subcommittees and so forth. And I kind of agree with what Mr. McDonald said. I mean, it took a lot of courage for us to come up with this. Because you know what? Not to disagree with you, but we have a revenue problem in this town, a very bad one. And you can't solve a revenue problem consistently on the expense side of the ledger. It just can't be done. And yes, I know a family has got the same kind of revenue problem, but they do have options to them. They can sell couches, they can get a part-time job. There's all kinds of ways in which a family can bring money into a household that is not always open to us. So this is kind of the only way that is open to us to not totally dismantle Wareham Public Schools. And so to put this on the ballot, I think took a lot of courage. And it's been kicked around already politically, and we knew it would. But you know what? It's the right thing to do right now, in my opinion. Right now, it's the right thing to do. And ultimately, it's going to be the choice of the voters.
If it goes through that.
I do have a question. I do have a question, and I apologize if it's out of order. If the motion related to school buses specified the vehicles that we wanted to purchase, 2 large buses, 1 7D van, blah, 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 whatever. We don't know.
That was my point of information before, but
let's
can we finish this
assume
one first?
Let's assume we did it. We specified. It was on a wing and a prayer because we had no idea whether we'd actually have the money to do it, but we specified it, and it was authorized. Would that, in your opinion, allow it to be consistent with the charter?
I don't have an answer to that, that's why I want to go talk to council.
Mr. Chair.
And the reason I was so frustrated is because I've talked to council, and they assured me that that was what we accomplished, because I would have never put that article before this committee or town meeting if I didn't think it was going to solve a problem. Why waste your time, my time, and town meeting's time?
Jeff, I'm sorry, but I think that what the chair has said here is that he's going to ask for a reconsideration, and I think that he is already thinking that way. It was my point of information that if there was specificity in there, but we have an article that we're talking about right now, the override, so I think that that's where it's going, but
Yes,
I
we'll
just
go to
don't want to
him
get off
very-
this override article.
I think we're off the override. It is what it is.
But there's no vote on that.
I know that.
Okay, so I have to go to.
Many people talk to council, and many people get opinions from council, that's the
Right.
problem. Okay.
And I trust the judgment of this committee that they're gonna go back and look at that article again.
Is there any more on Article 26, which is the 2.5 override? Seeing none, all those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed?
Opposed.
Opposed.
That'd be 5-0.
Start on the next one. Do it that
The next article, 27, is read. It's the Form A committee for the Vermont School Building Committee, that's what it is. It's specified by the state as to who is, what the committee members will be and where they come from. You all have it in front of you, quite lengthy, so I'm not going to read this one.
I'll make a motion.
Motion for favorable action.
Second.
And second?
Mr. Chairman,
Yes.
I understand that this doesn't affect the question of the Minot School goals. This is something we need to put in place for the study committee to be able to move forward. No matter what we do, it's one of the hurdles we have to pass in order for us to get to Article 28.
It's a requirement.
It's a requirement, yes.
It doesn't cost the town any money to my
Not to appoint the
knowledge.
committee?
No.
Right. And 28 doesn't pass, it's a moot issue.
Right, that's it.
Any further discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Abstentions? 7-0.
So 6, one of the
Oh,
three.
sorry, 6-0.
She would have voted yes.
She would have written it down. She would have written it down perfectly. 28 is to see if the town will vote to authorize the treasurer to borrow some of the money contingent upon the approval of a Proposition 2.5 debt exclusion to be expended under the direction of the Minot Forest School Building Committee for a feasibility study of the Minot Forest Elementary School at 63 Minot Avenue, Wareham, Mass., for which feasibility study the town may be eligible for a grant from the Massachusetts School Building Authority. The MSBA's grant program is a non-entitlement discretionary program based on need as determined by the MSBA, and any cost the town incurs in connection with the feasibility study in excess of any grant approved by and received from the MSBA shall be the sole responsibility of the town or take any other action relative thereto. Motion for favorable.
action.
Have a second?
Second.
Mr. McDonald's discussion?
I just want to add, I mean, the way I heard this and from the other meetings that we're working on the master plan, if this doesn't pass, then we go to the back of the line, not just for Minot, but for Deacon's, I believe we go to the back of the line. If we do not raise this sum of money, then we go to the back of the line, and it may be 10 years till we have again. And if you've been to the schools, there's issues.
First off, you're knocked out, it may not take 10 years, and I think the 10-year statement was based on by the time you get on and go through all the study processes
Right.
again and build the school, it could be as much as 10 years before the first child walks in.
But that was the specific question I asked Dr. Rabinovich when he sat here, so I heard the same thing. And I accepted that the individual had misspoke. Since it is not.
Sorry, there's no list, but what Dr. Rabinovich said before is that it's a process that they go through evaluation, and that if you don't go through the motions, then you're out, and then it's a decision that they make on when you get back in. And
Correct.
based on other folks that have come out and gone back in and needs-based, and all of a sudden there might be schools that have larger needs than us. So we don't know if it'll take us another 2, 6, 10, 15 years to be able to get to the stage that we're at right now. But there is no official list that you automatically get bumped to the bottom.
It will put us behind, though, there's absolutely no question.
There's no chance that we'll ever get on again.
I think the best way to explain it is that, as they said in the phone conversation, was that they need to see your commitment to the project. And if you don't have the money by November 9th, then obviously the citizen doesn't support it.
270 days.
Right. If they don't support it, then obviously you're not going to get on it again next year. I mean, they're going to hesitate because they're trying to spend the money wherever they can as quickly as they can.
Feasibility.
I think they said they had, what, 140? that they're going through right now, 140 applications.
Oh.
I think
Yes, sir.
the only small point I'd make is an obvious one, and that is, this would be another signal to parents with respect to whether they want to educate their children here. It is either a community that invests in its infrastructure. The problem is, as your representative to the Capital Planning Committee knows so well, there are many, many things that this town needs in addition to another school. The difference, of course, is that here we can anticipate 60 to 70% reimbursement, and our other capital projects are basically not reimbursed.
Any further discussion? Paulson?
I have an observation, and you may say this is out of order. We're asking the town employees to take a 3.75% pay cut. Now, that's part of this. Well, what's being done on the school side? You're saying to us, well, we've got to pass this for the kids. We've got to convince the parents this is good. But have you gone? I know you've said that the steps, I believe, have been frozen for a year. How about going to the teachers and saying, look, this is wonderful, but the system has changed. Town doesn't have the money to do these things in the future. And we have to do things much differently. We're going to have to eliminate all steps. I realize that this gets into a much deeper conversation, a philosophical conversation.
But, Mr. Paulson, we have done that. And I want to give you one perfect example, okay? We're not even talking about the cuts we've made. You want to talk about a concession? The high school teachers made a great concession last year. They're working 20% more time for the same amount of money. 20% more time for the same amount of money. Now, where I come from, that's a concession, a huge concession.
Let me just respond to that. And I appreciate what you're saying, but if I wanted to go to work for Ford Motor Company today, 2 years ago, 3 years ago, it was $30 an hour. Now I go to work for them at $15 an hour. It may come to, and again, and I don't want to belabor the point, it may come to you having to go to the teachers and say, you're not only working 20% more, you're going to have to take a 20% pay cut.
Well, they did take a 0% increase a year
I'm
ago.
talking about that. I've said enough on this. I think that's a problem within the town.
I do understand that you and I can philosophically disagree on that, because I'm going to tell you, we cannot solve the woes of the town on the back solely of the public employees.
And I'm not saying that the school department is trying to do that. That's not my point.
No. Any further comments? All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed?
Opposed.
Abstentions? 6-0. Sorry, 6-1-0. I'm confused. I think that's everything. I'll get back. I will put that revolver on the next agenda. I will be talking, not just for you, but for another department as well, about the same issue with the council. All right, to see if it'll change what he told me the last time. Okay, to see if it'll agree with what he told you the first time. If I may. All right. Next on the agenda.
I want to, excuse me, I just want to thank the indulgence of the committee and the time that you've given us, and for the emotionalism of this chairman.
We thank you
I
for
don't
all of your emotion.
Don't worry about it.
It's been around me too long.
It's not an easy issue, though.
I knew where you were going. You were gonna. All you want to do is click clarification. That's it.
Thank you, folks.
I would like to, Mr. Sweat, before you stand up, though. All right, I think I speak for the committee when I say we appreciate your emotionalism. All right, so therefore, I know even I personally did not take offense to it.
No.
No, not at all.
Committee, motion to adjourn?
So moved.
Second?
All right, we're out of here.
Mr. Campino? Mr. Campino?
They're out.
Campina.
That's another tab, Kelly.
Yeah,
They're probably not big enough if you take into account the capital needs.
right. Thank you. I know, Bob helped me put these together, maybe. Bob said he helped me put these together.
Is the insurance settlement?
Well, the change of photo.
Advising what he now thinks it is, understanding the section 30.
They're faking money to go ahead and fund that. After town meeting, there's an invite, there's an article in there that gives that money back.
Yeah, somebody can, yeah, you can prove that to me first.
Yeah, I did a good job of that. I apologize.
All right, now that Mr. Campina has called the payout again.
That's an explanation. I apologize. I came in this last week. I didn't think to believe it when I was here last week, so I apologize. I should have.
No.
It would have been a lot easier. Would have been a lot easier. But I don't have that.
First off, I think everybody's pretty aware of what's happened, so you don't need to go that theory. I just think you need to go into your solution.
Well, it's been a real long process. A lot of time and energy. Orientation, for those who haven't been to the plant, is an orientation where we're talking about, just so you can see the area, the neighborhood specific. So that is the orientation.
He's trying to get order around here.
Trying to get order again. All right, Article 45, to see if the town will vote
That's
to
the
transfer
orientation.
a sum of money for the construction and installation of a 150,000-gallon water pollution control equalizing tank. Such sums of money to be funded from water pollution control certified retained earnings or take any other action related thereto. Mr. Chair, I entertain a motion for favorable action.
He's got all kinds of things.
Motion for favorable action?
So moved.
Second.
Second. Mr. Campino will wait for you. You still passed out paper.
How many trees?
Coming out of his
I
budget.
tell you, it's crazy.
Well,
we got
Double-sided, Mr. Campino.
I
Next
did-
time,
yeah, you know,
double-sided.
We just purchased a new sheet, I'll learn how to use it, so I apologize. You're absolutely right, you're absolutely right.
All right, folks.
You're absolutely right.
Where's the little dot that says
Okay,
here?
you're probably aware of the issue that I'm talking about here. We have another issue that's been around for quite some time. 5 years, 6 years, I believe, since the inception of the treatment plant. And it's come to a head. We've tried everything chemically. We've exhausted our efforts. There's a report here from Tech Environmental. We spent a lot of time last year, different times of the day, morning, afternoon, evening, 3 o'clock in the morning, 4 o'clock in the morning, studying flows, the consistency of the product that's in it, qualifies, a lot of testing. And the report speaks to that. That's the conclusion. So the conclusion is that we need to do a couple of things. One is we need to build an enclosure, an enclosed tank. I don't know if anybody's been out to the plant. We've got 2 1-million-gallon basins outside, wide open. We put raw sewer in it. And because it's open, it permeates the area in the air. The wind blows the neighborhood, it overwhelms them. For years, we told them that it was because they had bad septic systems. We led them to believe that they were the problem, not us. And since then, we've admitted to our culpability. We've accepted responsibility of the problem, and now we're going to solve it. So I'm asking to your blessing to move some money. I had Jason research the money, make sure it was there. And he actually helped me prepare this article to be one. He wrote the article because he was better at it than I. And we're bringing it to you. I'm asking for your consideration and your support for those homeowners that have tolerated, suffered, and we've impacted their quality of life. And it's time we took care of it. So that's the gist of it. And I'll take specific questions. I'd be happy to try to elaborate.
We're taking Article 45, see if the town will vote to transfer a sum or sums of money for the construction and installation of a 150,000-gallon water pollution control equalizing tank. Such sums of money to be funded from the water pollution control certified retained earnings, or to take any other action related thereto. I will entertain a motion.
So moved.
Second.
Ms. Cattouli, Mr. Calamero. All right, gentlemen, ladies, you've heard that, so I recognize Mr. McDonald.
The actual motion has 400,000.
Correct.
So that is the amount we're going to spend.
Yes, we've done, did I tell you, in the explanation, there should be that we've researched the size of the tank. It happens to be, we carry 100,000 gallons of water inside that basin. We came there, the basin carried about 500,000 gallons of water. And we had aerators. And the aerators were agitating the water and releasing the sulfides, and really was obnoxious. We're still odorous, and what we've done is we've lowered the level of those tanks down to 100,000, below the air diffusers. We no longer use air. And so the goal here now is to build an enclosed tank. It's actually going to be 158,000 by dimensions, 30 foot wide, 30 foot diameter, and it's going to be 30 foot high. It's going to have a cone bottom. We're going to have a mixer in it. It's going to keep the product homogeneous. And then we'll take that, we'll put it in throughout the day, and then at night, we'll equalize it in. The purpose of an equalizing tank is two things. One, we have peak flows. And when the peak flow hits us, we've got 3 major pump stations. If they all fire up, all that hits the plant at one time. The plant can't digest it fast enough, so it diverts it to these tanks. Right. And so we're just going to enclose the tank, and so it diverts. We'll have it enclosed. We'll take air, suck the air out, odorous air, put it through our biofilters, and clean the air so it removes an odorous source. And so yes, it's going to be 158 actual 1,000 gallons by dimensions. The tank is actually going to cost, and we use a 30% inflation factor, the cost of $1.30 per gallon. We increase it, it used to be $1 a gallon, I increased by 30%, so it's $1.30 a gallon, and the actual number is going to come out to, with all the ancillaries, it's going to come out to about $300, and we're saying $60,000. So we're asking for $400,000.
I have a question.
Sure.
I'm just reading this. I wish you had sent us this report. We could have gone through it.
I should have given it to you last week. I apologize.
I'm just reading this very quickly, and it says installing a new 200,000 to 300,000 gallon waste storage tank to use as.
That's on the recommendation of the odor consultant. I had called them and said that it'd be, because when you start adding the numbers up, it'd be economic. We only carry 100,000, so it doesn't make sense to me to 200 to 300,000 because of long term. So that's why we decreased to 100,000.
Oh, that's what I was asking because.
Yeah, his recommendation was 200 to 300.
Yeah, because you're
That's his recommendation.
You install it.
And you're looking for what,
148, 158,000 because we only carry 100.
Okay.
No sense in building 400,000, only carry 100. It doesn't, to me, it's a waste of money. And also, we're looking to work with some energy companies who's already made a proposal to us or been in toward the plant. We have some great energy saving ideas. And part of that is redoing the process to take more water, to push it into our pump stations, to equalize it differently, and so we will carry less water. So that'll make the 300,000 gallon tank even more unnecessary. Okay. So I don't want to go there. So we're going to go to something.
That was my question, that we didn't need 200 to 300. If we only got 100, then we need 100.
We need 158.
Thank you.
Makes more sense.
I hope we all caught one of the most important things said here. Somebody's making a living as an odor consultant.
Hey, that's the job for me.
Absolutely. And
who knew they existed?
Well, you know why they exist? Because we started hearing things. I get nervous when I hear things like lawyers, you'll buy my house. At that point, I get nervous, and I say, okay, now I'm exposing the town to quite a bit of liability. So it made sense to me to hire the expert that can make some bona fide recommendations, stand by them. And if we ever went to litigation, we're going to need them. So that's why it's important to get another consultant. And so now we just put everything to bed, deal with it, and be done with it. And I must say, the neighbors, and I want to say this because I bought some emails if you want. I mean, they've really been adamant and at times insulted me pretty good. And I don't have a problem with it. That's my position. I'm there, and it's not important that I didn't create it. What's important is that here I am, and I have to assume responsibility. But all said and done, I think that they deserve relief, and they have put up with a lot, and they're legitimate. And I take my hat off to them because they've been patient and they put up with a lot. And you know, I don't know how many people have been down there. And I really truly invite you to come down. I'm going to stand you by that basin, and I'll tell you how long it'll be. So that's all I got to say.
Any other questions or comments? Hearing and seeing none, all those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? So we have 6-0-0. Thank you very much.
Thank you, guys.
Thank you.
There's one more, isn't there?
What do you mean? Oh, okay, I'm sorry.
That was your only article, guy, right?
Yes.
Sir?
That's it for me. The 23,000 on that I'm using for, I'm gonna take it out of my chemical budget. There's some chemicals. Let's go on my budget, so.
Article 10?
Article 10.
Try to keep you waiting down here.
Oh, no problem. Thank you for your time.
Hang on a second.
Wait, there's one more article.
For me?
Do we table this? Did we table
Okay.
something?
I'm sorry.
Oh, yeah,
Why
okay.
did we table it?
Hang on for a second. 6-0-0. Okay. Article 10. We'll get to that, ladies and gentlemen.
That was a change.
Sorry.
Information on what I got.
Is that Article 10 really 45, or is that, I believe I only have one. But if there's only one.
You did, but we might need you to answer some questions. Because
Okay.
we tabled this for a reason. Do you remember why we tabled Article 10?
What?
Water pollution control
Probably because we
facility
didn't have
budget?
final numbers.
For budget?
I haven't read it yet.
Yes, there has to be an amendment made to what's written here.
I think it has to do with the admin fee, right?
Yeah, that's right, because remember the admin fee, the way it was being handled in the budget versus the way it has to be done.
I'm probably just as confused on that as you are. It had to do with the DOR mandate, which I haven't seen. It was something about the town side and our side, and we paid it. There was somehow the DOR recommended that we take it out, even though it's in the budget, the 6.5, it's in the budget, but when we do the paperwork, it's actually going to say 6, because the 5 has to go on the town side. Trust me, I'm just as confused as you may be. I'm trying to get some clarification, but that's how it was explained to me. So it doesn't change, and maybe somebody else.
The admin comes on the town operating side, and when you put it in the sewer enterprise fund, you're double appropriating it. So DOR recommended that this is the way the article been written, but you could check with Derek, but that was the explanation he gave me.
It's still tabled.
Yeah, I think.
Because I can't give any more than that. Derek,
And I think it will be in the explanation.
Hold on one second.
I believe it's written in the explanation.
I think it was $512,600.
That's something that keeps getting fluffed up every time we lose a time this year.
Can I ask a question while you're looking for something, Mr. Chairman?
Sure. I'll have it later. Dick.
Yes, Mr. Assistant. We've been here, 6 years now, Steve and I, at least.
Too long.
And you're referring to me, I know that. We haven't seen an operating statement from the Water Pollution Control Facility in that 6 years, have we?
What do you want?
An income statement, a cash flow statement, a balance sheet on a quarterly basis. And I've always wondered how they can set rates, that they, being the selectmen, without having appropriate financial statement. So, question to you.
The answer is, it's the same process that the U.S. Congress uses.
Actually, that's a lot of help.
You're getting financial.
Now that I got the answer, I see.
What I'm getting now, I don't know if it's what you're looking for. I do a reconciliation monthly. I look, and I don't know if this is going to help you at all. And I don't know, I'm not sharing it because I haven't been authorized to share it, but who knows? But anyways.
There's the answer.
There's your answer. But anyways, the point is, and I'll just say what I know, and you can tell me what you're looking for. But Every month, I take every dollar we spent. I take that and I tally it up. I compare that to what the town accounting has. So I make sure that we're kind of the same. If I find differences, then we request to them to make the changes. You put this here, it belongs there, so we do the reconciliation, the money's the same.
Right.
I get a report on what I'm making, and I check, okay, well, this is what you said I got for revenue. Although I may ask for $5 million in fees, I don't see it all the time, so I ask them, how's that coming in? I look at what my revenue receipts are for my septage and my grease. I look at my revenue receipts for my permits. So everything we do, I look and see those. So I try to tally it so it matches this number here that we put in the first of the year, and I keep adding it to make sure it's coming in.
So you've got the pieces, you just don't have the report.
So if you need, we have to figure out, we can generate a report if that's what you're looking for. We can figure out.
We've only been looking for it for 4 years.
Yeah, I got that. I mean,
Yeah, that would be very helpful.
I can, so you can see that, because we do that, I do that now, because I need to know, because I'm trying to establish an honest-to-God budget. What do I really need? What's it really costing me? I'm trying to establish that, because I've got some problems, like some issues coming down the road, and I've got to know them for long term. So, yeah, so I have numbers.
Very quickly, we can vote on this article. I'll explain very quickly. I need a quick motion to go beyond the hour of 10, we'll be very quick.
Go ahead, we've got a motion.
Motion, second?
Sure.
All in favor? Opposed?
No.
No.
Let's try it again, all in favor, raise your right hand.
What was the motion?
It's just.
Go beyond the hour of 10, opposed? All right, motion passes. The article at one point was modified where it didn't balance. I have the official warrant that was issued. It reads now as based on what you have in front of you. All right, the revenue, all right, and the expenses balance. All right, if you look at your budget, you'll now see the revenue number 65. There's a transfer that goes over to the town cover for the healthcare benefits, and then the expenses are 6,007, whatever, the balance is 0. So the article is fine as it reads now. It was not when I asked you to put it on hold.
Okay.
The certified copy, for some reason, came in with the correct wording rather than, so it shouldn't be changed.
So we can vote on 10.
We can vote on 10. All it does is say you're collecting X amount of money and spending the same amount of money. Okay, so motion for favorable action.
Favorable action.
Second?
Well, so, yeah.
Mr. Cattouli, second. Any
That's
discussion?
a really poor section.
Any discussion? Seeing none, all those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed?
6, 7.
6, 6
6,
out.
6-0-0. Motion passes.
Wow, that was quiet. I didn't know.
All right.
Thank you very much.
Wait, do we need him for this Article 47?
I'll stay for the
It says,
Kathy?
yeah,
No.
okay.
No,
Thank you.
that's a petition article. I need one other quick thing, and that is, what's that?
That's what I submitted.
Okay. Oh, wow. Wow, okay. The letter from the chairman, report of the committee, whatever. I have to start drafting that.
What?
I have to start drafting the letter from the chairman of the finance committee, also known as our report. Right, it's usually at the head of our report. I'd like the permission of the committee to include in that letter a recommendation that we feel that the selectmen should put the debt exclusions in Proposition 2.5 in front of the voters.
Favorable motion to do so.
Favorable motion to do so?
Second.
Second. Any discussion? Does anybody feel that we shouldn't do that? Or, no? Seeing no objection, I'll take a vote.
Aye.
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 5-0-0. I'll include that in the letter.
Yeah, can we go home?
I'll accept the motion to adjourn.
Adjourn motion. Let's see, my motion's better as yours.
I'll get you adjourned, never mind.
I'm gonna take it, it's past the hour of 10.
Hand me your phone.
Or adjourn.
Well, I'm
If you want to be willing to the
Yeah, I just want to let you know.
You're such a big
And the
mouth.
rest of you.
such a problem child.
So you can remove it off of your agenda.
I'll take it off my agenda. I'll just notify everybody that I have still